deep beneath that heavily battered crust, an invisible rhythmic magnetic heartbeat was finally detected pulsing silently through the dark. Imagine the profound shock of discovery when robotic instruments revealed a vast electrically conductive ocean of hyper-saline water, completely hidden from the prying eyes of our most powerful telescopes. The absolute unyielding stillness of the surface is merely an elegant illusion, masking a dynamic, liquid world that has miraculously survived the freezing vacuum of space for eons. If we were to look closer at the ambitious designs of modern space architects, this quiet sphere emerges as the ultimate logical staging ground for humanity's grandest journey. Surprisingly, the rich legacy of our robotic explorers now transitions seamlessly into the practical blueprints of a breathtaking new era of deep space habitation. It is a frozen, radiation-free harbour waiting patiently for the arrival of the first crewed vessels, promising a secure, unshakable foothold in the intimidating void. But tonight, you do not need a massive starship or a specialised pressurised suit to make this incredible journey across the magnificent, echoing emptiness of the outer planets. As your tired muscles release their final remnants of tension, feel the heavy, comforting gravity of your own room holding you perfectly secure against the soft mattress. You're safe, and these ancient, awe-inspiring wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep. Allow the frantic worries of the waking world to completely dissolve into the pitch-black, tranquil silence of the cosmos, where time itself seems to slow to a glacial geologic crawl. The dark, mysterious ice is finally ready to share its billions of years of hidden history, gently unwinding a magnificent tale of colossal cosmic collisions and secret oceanic depths. Deep within the Jovian system, a silent sentinel keeps its eternal watch at a peaceful distance of nearly 1.9 million kilometers from its monstrous host planet. Deep within the Jovian system, a silent sentinel keeps its eternal watch at a peaceful distance of nearly 1.9 million kilometers from its monstrous host planet. This immense gulf of space isolates the moon from the furious radiation and magnetic storms that plague the inner realms of Jupiter's domain. In this quiet, distant orbit, the faint, cold light of a distant sun struggles to illuminate the dark, ancient ice that coats the world in a perpetual twilight. Standing on this lonely outpost, the gas giant appears as a mesmerizing, swirling marble, suspended in the velvet blackness of the cosmos, yet it is far enough away to exert only a gentle gravitational pull. The sheer vastness of this orbital path ensures that the sphere remains a pristine relic, untouched by the immense heat and tidal friction that constantly reshape its celestial siblings. Here, the frozen surface reflects the sparse starlight, creating a hypnotic glimmer across the cratered plains. This tranquil separation has allowed the moon to preserve its ancient secrets beneath a battered exterior for billions of years without interruption. The absolute silence of the vacuum is matched only by the still, unchanging landscape that stretches endlessly toward the curved horizon. Picture a world locked in a permanent gaze, an endless staring contest where this moon always shows the exact same battered face to Jupiter. This tidal locking is a common fate for moons in the outer solar system, but here it creates a haunting duality between the hemisphere that endlessly confronts the gas giant and the one that looks outward into the infinite abyss. The faint, cold light of a distant sun creeps across this fixed visage, casting long, shifting shadows over ancient impact craters and dark ice. Because its rotation perfectly matches its orbital period, a single day on this desolate sphere stretches on for more than half an Earth month. During this drawn-out cycle, the Terminator line separating day and night moves with agonizing slowness, gradually plunging the jagged, icy terrain into absolute freezing darkness. The side facing Jupiter is bathed in a ghostly pale glow reflected from the planet's massive cloud tops, a subtle luminescence known as Jovian shine. Those hypothetical observers standing on the inward-facing hemisphere would see the giant planet eternally suspended in the exact same spot in the ink-black sky. Meanwhile, the outward-facing hemisphere remains forever blind to its host, staring blindly into the deep, star-studded void of interstellar space. Surprisingly, the universe spared this moon from the violent orbital dance that constantly heats and torments its inner siblings, Io, Europa and Ganymede. While those three inner moons are locked in a relentless Laplace resonance, constantly pulling and stretching one another, this distant world drifts outside that chaotic rhythm. The absence of this gravitational tug-of-war means its interior is not subjected to the fierce tidal friction that fuels colossal volcanoes or maintains vast, warm subsurface oceans. Without these intense internal fires, the moon's surface has remained a quiet, frozen wasteland, untouched by the dramatic tectonic shifts and cryovolcanic eruptions seen closer to Jupiter. The faint, cold light of a distant sun glints off a crust of dark ice that has barely altered its composition since the dawn of the solar system. This profound geologic stillness makes it a perfect, undisturbed time capsule, preserving the exact conditions of the early planetary nebula. In this serene isolation, the celestial body experiences no internal swelling or contracting, allowing its ancient impact scars to remain perfectly intact over the eons. The tranquil orbit ensures that the only forces shaping its terrain are the slow, inevitable micrometeorite bombardments and the patient creeping of deep, frozen time. This cosmic structure firmly establishes it as the outermost of the four magnificent Galilean moons, first spied by the pioneering astronomer Galileo Galilei in the winter of 1610. When he pointed his rudimentary spyglass toward the heavens, he saw this distant sphere merely as a tiny trembling point of light, yet it forever changed humanity's understanding of the cosmos. As the furthest anchor of this miniature planetary system, it defines the outermost boundary of Jupiter's immediate massive gravitational influence. Orbiting so far from the centre, it travels on a wide, sweeping path that requires far more time to complete than the frantic circuits of its sister moons. The faint, cold light of a distant sun reflects off its dark ice, returning just enough photons to be captured by terrestrial telescopes across the immense void of interplanetary space. This profound distance makes it the darkest and least reflective of the four major satellites, blending seamlessly into the shadowy depths of the outer solar system. Its discovery shattered the ancient belief that all celestial bodies must orbit the Earth, sparking a revolution in astronomical thought that echoes to this day. Standing as the lonely frozen vanguard of the Jovian system, it continues to silently bear witness to the cosmic dance it helped reveal. Unbound by the strict repeating gravitational alignments known as orbital resonance, the celestial body entirely escapes the crushing tidal forces that continuously tear at Io and Europa. Those inner worlds are relentlessly squeezed and stretched like cosmic stress balls, generating immense internal friction that melts rock and water alike. In stark contrast, this outermost Galilean moon glides smoothly through the vacuum, experiencing a remarkably uniform gravitational pull that leaves its deep interior almost perfectly undisturbed. The absence of this intense internal heating allows its thick crust of dark ice to remain rigid and locked in a state of eternal deep freeze. Under the faint cold light of a distant sun, this unyielding surface bears the unhealed wounds of countless ancient impacts, completely devoid of the smooth, resurfaced icy plains found on Europa. There are no geysers of vapour venting into space, nor are there massive tectonic plates grinding together to erase the geologic history stamped upon its face. This profound gravitational peace means that any heat lingering within the moon is purely the remnant glow of its ancient formation and the slow decay of radioactive elements. It is a world where time stands incredibly still, perfectly preserved by its fortuitous escape from the brutal, invisible machinery of planetary resonance. If we were to look closer, piercing the gloom of the outer solar system, we would see a massive sphere roughly the size of the planet Mercury. Yet, despite this impressive physical volume, It contains only about a third of the innermost planet's mass, revealing a fundamentally different composition. This stark contrast in density proves that instead of being a dense ball of heavy iron and rock, it is a lighter, frozen mixture composed almost equally of rock and water ice. This low density dictates a weaker surface gravity, making a theoretical footstep on its dark, icy plains feel incredibly light and bouncy, compared to walking on a rocky terrestrial world. The faint, cold light of a distant sun barely penetrates the dusty, heavily cratered surface, masking the immense volume of frozen water that lies trapped just beneath the crust. Because it lacks a massive, dense core, its internal structure is thought to be only partially differentiated, a chaotic blend of ice and rock that never fully separated. This creates a fascinating planetary paradox, where a moon boasts the physical dimensions of a true planet while retaining the lightweight, icy heart of a massive comet. It is a towering giant of frost and dust, drifting silently through the frigid outer reaches of Jupiter's immense realm. Notice the deeply dark, mottled appearance that greedily absorbs much of the sparse sunlight reaching its surface, creating a stark contrast against the brilliant void of space. This murky complexion is the result of billions of years of cosmic dust, micrometeorites, and radiation slowly baking the icy crust into a complex brownish-black sludge. The faint, cold light of a distant sun reflects weakly off this ancient grime, leaving the moon looking like a bruised and battered relic of the early solar system. Interspersed across this dark canvas are striking, bright impact craters, where recent cosmic collisions have violently punched through the ancient dust layer to expose pristine, white water ice underneath. These dazzling scars create a mesmerizing, speckled pattern, like diamonds scattered carelessly across a field of black velvet. Over unimaginable stretches of time, even these bright, fresh wounds will eventually darken as the relentless space weathering continues its slow, darkening work. The exact chemical makeup of this dark material remains a tantalizing mystery, likely containing organic compounds and complex silicates delivered by comets over eons. It serves as a shadowy shroud, hiding the vast frozen oceans and ancient mysteries that sleep quietly beneath the heavily battered exterior. Named after a beautifully tragic mythical nymph deeply loved by the god Zeus, the moon lives up to its ancient, profoundly solitary legacy. In classical lore, this figure was transformed into a bear and banished to the wilderness, a fitting parallel for a celestial body exiled to the cold, lonely fringes of the Jovian system. Drifting silently through the unforgiving dark, it embodies a quiet endurance, far removed from the chaotic dramas playing out among the inner, more volatile moons. The faint, cold light of a distant sun seems to mournfully caress its dark ice, casting a melancholic glow over the endlessly cratered terrain. Unlike its mythological namesake, this world has never known the warmth of a close embrace, remaining eternally frozen and distant from the immense planetary god it circles. It stands as a silent monument to deep time, holding its ancient shape while the rest of the solar system continually reinvents itself through fire and collision. This poetic nomenclature perfectly captures the essence of a world defined by its isolation and its quiet, unassuming beauty in the vastness of space. As it traces its wide, unending path, it remains a solitary wanderer, forever locked in the cold, distant orbit of its destiny. Traversing its massive orbit takes a remarkably leisurely 16.7 Earth days to complete just one full revolution around the gas giant. This long, sweeping journey covers an immense distance, pushing the moon through the quietest, most undisturbed regions of Jupiter's vast gravitational well. Because it moves so slowly compared to the frantic multi-day orbits of its inner siblings, the passage of time here feels incredibly stretched and diluted. During this extensive celestial circuit, the faint, cold light of a distant sun strikes the dark ice from slowly shifting angles, creating endlessly stretching and retracting shadows. The sheer length of this orbital period means that a single season on this world, if it had any, would drag on in a state of near-permanent unchanging twilight. As it glides along this expansive track, it sweeps up stray cosmic dust and debris, gradually accumulating a darker coating on its leading hemisphere. This methodical, unhurried pace perfectly matches the moon's geologic stillness, emphasizing a world where absolutely nothing happens quickly. It is a slow, rhythmic pendulum swinging through the outer dark, endlessly repeating a journey it has maintained since the very birth of the solar system. Because of its vast and protective distance, radiation levels here are merely a microscopic fraction of the deadly storms found closer to the raging gas giant. Jupiter possesses a monstrous magnetic field that traps high-energy particles, creating blistering radiation belts that can instantly sterilize the surfaces of Io and Europa. However, this outermost Galilean moon orbits safely beyond the most lethal reaches of this invisible, swirling maelstrom, existing in a pocket of relative cosmic calm. This benign environment means the dark ice is spared the intense chemical alterations and relentless particle bombardment that constantly reshape its neighbouring worlds. The faint, cold light of a distant sun can be enjoyed without the constant deadly rain of energised electrons and protons, making it a surprisingly hospitable location in the outer solar system. It is precisely this low radiation profile that makes the moon such an incredibly attractive target for future human exploration and the establishment of long-term outposts. Astronauts could hypothetically walk its ancient cratered plains with minimal shielding, a luxury utterly impossible on the radiation-soaked ice of Europa. Here, the deep silence of space is matched by a physical safety that invites humanity to eventually stand upon its dark, frozen shores. Those dark, frozen shores beckon us to consider a landscape that holds the ultimate title of the oldest and most heavily bombarded surface in the entirety of our star system. As we transition from the relative safety of the space above to the tactile reality of the ground below, the sheer scale of its ancient history becomes overwhelming. Every square inch of this crust has been pulverized and reshaped by an unrelenting cosmic crossfire that began when the surrounding planets were still just swirling disks of hot gas and dust. If we were to look closer at the horizon, we would see no smooth plains or fresh valleys, only a rugged, unbroken expanse of impact scars overlapping one another in an infinite fractal pattern. This ancient canvas has endured without a single planetary resurfacing event, stubbornly holding on to its primeval shape while the rest of the cosmos moved on. It is a world defined not by what it is becoming, but entirely by what it has survived. Profound geologic silence reigns here, leaving these countless impact scars perfectly preserved for over 4 billion Earth years in the deep freeze of the outer void. While other celestial bodies have molten hearts that drive surface renewal, this sphere possesses a cold, rigid interior that offers no such regenerative power. The energy required to melt and smooth the icy crust dissipated eons ago, plunging the entire globe into a permanent unyielding slumber. As you breathe in slowly, let your own shoulders drop, mirroring the complete stillness of this ancient, undisturbed world. There are no howling winds or flowing rivers to erode the jagged edges of the craters, allowing the delicate rims and central peaks to stand exactly as they formed in the immediate aftermath of their explosive creation. The only perceptible change comes from the unimaginably slow accumulation of interstellar dust settling gently across the silent expanse. This stillness is so absolute that if an explorer were to leave a footprint in the dark, powdery regolith today, it would remain crisp and unaltered until the sun itself eventually swelled and consumed the inner planets. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain serves as a flawless, unchanging memorial to the relentless bombardment of the late heavy bombardment period. In this quiet corner of space, time is measured not in passing seasons, but in the slow, inevitable creep of eternity. Without churning volcanoes or restless tectonic shifts to erase them, the craters endlessly overlap in a chaotic, mesmerizing mosaic of destruction. Each new collision simply obliterates a portion of an older scar, creating a complex layered tapestry of circular depressions that stretch in every conceivable direction. The surface is completely saturated, meaning that any fresh strike must inevitably destroy an existing crater, maintaining a brutal equilibrium of ruin across the entire hemisphere. Visualize a shattered mirror where every shard has been fractured again and again, leaving no single piece of the original surface intact. The crust lacks the internal heat necessary to drive continental drift, meaning there are no subduction zones to swallow ancient terrain or volcanic rifts to pave over the past with fresh, smooth ice. Everything that falls from the sky permanently leaves its mark, contributing to a deeply textured landscape that is both beautiful and terrifying in its relentless complexity. This absence of internal activity guarantees that the rough, dusty texture we see today is the exact same view that has existed since the dawn of planetary formation. The cratered terrain is a physical ledger of every piece of debris that has crossed the moon's path, meticulously recorded in the unyielding ice. It is a frozen, chaotic battlefield where the only victor is the enduring, silent passage of time. Consider standing on a world completely devoid of towering mountain ranges, deep canyons, or massive volcanic rifts that typically define a planetary landscape. Because the crust is a brittle mixture of rock and deep frozen water, it cannot fold or buckle to create the majestic peaks and deep valleys found on worlds with active, restless interiors. Instead, the topography is exclusively defined by the immediate, explosive aftermath of objects violently slamming into the ground from the sky above. The horizon is dominated solely by the undulating, circular rims of impact basins, forming a rolling, rhythmic terrain of bowl-shaped depressions and shattered central uplifts. There are no jagged mountain spires piercing the black sky, nor are there sprawling tectonic fault lines splitting the frozen plains wide open. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is remarkably uniform in its chaos, offering a landscape that is simultaneously incredibly rugged and surprisingly flat on a global scale. As you sink deeper into your resting position, feel the solid, unchanging support beneath you, much like the stable, unshifting crust of this silent world. Without the dramatic uplifting forces of plate tectonics, the moon's surface relies entirely on the external trauma of cosmic collisions to provide its geological character. It is a brilliantly simple, devastatingly battered canvas that completely ignores the complex geologic dramas playing out on other, warmer spheres. Over vast stretches of time, the exposed water ice slowly turns directly into gas under the faint sunlight, leaving behind a fine layer of dark, residual dust. This incredibly slow process of sublimation acts as a gentle phantom wind, steadily stripping away the volatile water molecules and concentrating the heavier, darker impurities left behind. As the bright ice vanishes into the vacuum, a shadow seems to creep across the landscape, wrapping the ancient craters in a thick, somber shroud of cosmic grime. This fine, dark powder is the ultimate source of the moon's murky, mottled appearance, effectively camouflaging the brilliant frozen oceans that sleep miles below the surface. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is composed entirely of this concentrated residue, a mixture of organic compounds, silicates, and ancient meteoritic ash. It accumulates in the lowest depressions, slowly filling in the floors of older craters and softening their once sharp features into gentle, rolling bowls of black dust. If we were to brush away this dark, powdery veil, we would uncover a dazzling, highly reflective layer of pristine ice, trapped just beneath the grim exterior. The slow, relentless sublimation creates a fascinating thermal contrast, where the dark dust absorbs more heat, slightly accelerating the evaporation of the ice directly beneath it. This delicate, microscopic mechanism is the only active erosion taking place on a world that has otherwise been geologically dead since the very beginning. The colossal Valhalla impact basin stretches majestically across the northern hemisphere, with massive concentric rings rippling outward like frozen waves on a dark cosmic pond. This breathtaking structure is the largest multi-ring basin in the entire planetary system, a sprawling monument to an ancient collision of unimaginable apocalyptic power. When the colossal impactor struck, the sheer kinetic energy momentarily liquefied the brittle, icy crust, causing enormous seismic waves to surge outward through the planetary shell. Before these massive ripples could completely subside, the freezing vacuum of space rapidly cooled the mobilized ice, permanently locking the immense waves into solid concentric ridges. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is dramatically interrupted by these sweeping circular mountain chains that dominate a significant portion of the moon's surface. At the very center lies a bright, highly fractured zone where the crust was completely shattered and overturned by the explosive force of the initial strike. Take a slow, deep breath, letting your chest expand and contract like the ancient frozen ripples radiating from the heart of this spectacular celestial wound. The scale of this feature is so immense that standing within its outer rings, an observer would have absolutely no idea they were inside a crater, perceiving only a series of strange parallel ridges stretching beyond the horizon. It stands as a terrifying testament to the sheer violence of the early cosmos, perfectly preserved in the unyielding ice. These spectacular multi-ring structures are the permanent unhealed scars of ancient cosmic collisions that completely shattered the early fragile crust. During the chaotic late heavy bombardment, massive planetesimals careened through the outer dark, slamming into the forming moons with enough force to momentarily turn solid ice into an explosive, flowing slush. The resulting fractures propagated deep into the moon's interior, creating complex fault lines that arrange themselves into the vast circular patterns we observe today. Unlike a standard bowl-shaped crater, these massive impacts punched completely through the rigid outer shell, interacting with a softer, perhaps partially liquid layer hidden deep underground. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain provides a stark contrast to these enormous, organized concentric circles that seem to defy the random chaos of the surrounding landscape. The incredible energy required to forge these rings would have instantly vaporized oceans of water, sending a massive plume of superheated steam erupting into the black sky. Surprisingly, despite the apocalyptic nature of these events, the moon's overall structural integrity remained intact, absorbing the catastrophic blows without completely disintegrating into an asteroid belt. The frozen rings serve as crucial windows into the moon's ancient internal structure, offering clues about the thickness and rigidity of the primordial ice shell. They are the grandest, most violent brushstrokes on this ancient canvas, defining the global geography of a profoundly battered world. Another massive, defining feature, the colossal Asgard Basin, bears silent witness to a similarly cataclysmic event originating from the very dawn of the solar system. While slightly smaller than its gigantic sibling, this sprawling impact structure boasts a bright dome-like central region surrounded by its own intricate frozen system of fractured concentric rings. The sheer size of the impactor required to create this basin is staggering, likely a rogue comet or a wandering protoplanet that met a violent sudden end against the icy shield. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is dramatically swept aside here, replaced by a complex network of radial graben and towering concentric escarpments. The bright central dome suggests that the impact excavated deep, pristine ice from the moon's interior, tossing it violently across the darker, older plains before it froze back into place. Over billions of years, the slow, creeping relaxation of the ice has slightly softened the sharpest features of the basin, yet its overwhelming circular presence remains unmistakable from orbit. As you rest, allow your mind to drift toward the profound age of these structures, feeling a deep sense of calm in the face of such ancient, enduring history. The existence of multiple, continent-sized ring systems proves that the Moon was subjected to a relentless, punishing barrage of celestial artillery during its formative epoch. These gigantic scars are not mere craters. They are the foundational architecture of a world that was beaten and forged in the most violent crucibles of the ancient dark. Curiously absent from this heavily battered landscape are any extremely deep craters, a fascinating anomaly caused as the icy crust gradually flows and flattens under its own immense weight over millennia. While the initial impacts easily gouge out deep bowl-shaped depressions, the unique properties of deep frozen water prevent these sheer drops from remaining permanently steep. Over unfathomable stretches of time, the solid ice behaves almost like an incredibly slow-moving viscous fluid, slumping inward and pushing the crater floors gradually upward toward the surface. This relentless process of viscous relaxation slowly erases the dramatic, towering rims and plunging depths that characterize the impact scars on rocky worlds like our own Moon. The rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is therefore composed mostly of shallow, flattened pans, lacking the terrifying abyssal drops one might expect from such violent cosmic strikes. It is a landscape that is constantly, imperceptibly healing itself, not through active volcanic resurfacing, but through the slow, inevitable gravitational settling of cold plastic ice. If we were to measure the oldest basins, we would find they are surprisingly shallow, mere ghostly imprints of the catastrophic explosions that originally carved them. This silent, invisible flow reveals the hidden, dynamic nature of the frozen crust, a material that seems completely solid to the touch, yet remains fluid over the vast spans of geologic time. It is a subtle, flattening force that ensures the ancient canvas remains a rolling, undulating mosaic rather than a jagged, impassable field of deep, treacherous pits. Occasionally fresh, violent impacts briefly pierce the thick layer of dark dust, dramatically revealing the pristine, bright ice hidden beneath before eventually fading back into the ancient background. When a stray meteor strikes the surface today, it acts like a massive cosmic shovel, excavating the brilliant, unblemished water ice from the depths and violently scattering it across the murky plains. These fresh craters shine like brilliant solitary beacons against the prevailing gloom, surrounded by spectacular, radiating rays of white, frozen ejecta. The sheer visual contrast between the glowing, freshly exposed ice and the rough, dusty texture of the heavily cratered terrain is absolutely breathtaking. A sudden burst of light in a deeply shadowy world. However, this brilliance is entirely temporary, a fleeting spark on a canvas defined by its slow, inevitable surrender to the encroaching darkness. As soon as the new ice is exposed to the vacuum of space, the relentless process of sublimation and the slow rain of micrometeorites begin their steady, darkening work once again. Over the next few million years, the stark white rays will slowly fade, the bright central peaks will dull, and the fresh scar will seamlessly blend into the chaotic, overlapping mosaic of the ancient crust. The world quietly absorbs the new wound, pulling the dark shroud back over the exposed ice and returning to its profound geologic silence. It is a continuous, unimaginably slow cycle of sudden, violent illumination, followed by an eternity of quiet, dusty erasure. This dusty erasure actively maintains the dark shroud covering the Moon, as exploring the surface reveals a surprisingly opaque coating of unknown minerals, masking the highly reflective ice resting just below. The visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays of fresh craters and the deep brownish-black plains creates a striking chiaroscuro effect across the globe. It is as if a cosmic painter deliberately smeared soot over a pristine canvas of compacted snow, hiding the brilliant foundation from casual observation. Moving closer to the ground, the true nature of this gloomy veneer becomes apparent as a highly complex heterogeneous mix of non-ice materials. The composition of this murky layer remains one of the most tantalizing enigmas for astronomers, hinting at exotic chemical reactions taking place in the deep freeze of space. Rather than a uniform blanket, it is a patchy, uneven crust that completely dictates how sunlight interacts with the celestial body. Notice how the deep brownish-black plains seem to swallow the sparse photons that manage to travel this far from the sun. This dark ice acts as a highly effective thermal blanket, trapping trace amounts of heat and subtly altering the microclimates of the scarred terrain. The interplay between the dark surface and the hidden frozen ocean below represents a delicate, enduring thermal balance. Deep within the shadowy bowls of the ancient craters, remote sensors have detected delicate, lingering traces of carbon dioxide frost clinging stubbornly to the landscape. These volatile deposits are trapped within the extreme cold of these sunken depressions, where the ambient temperature plummets even further than on the exposed plains. It is a fragile, ephemeral frost that would instantly vaporize if exposed to direct solar radiation or warmer environments. This dry ice does not form continuous sheets, but rather exists in patchy, scattered concentrations, seemingly hiding in the darkest, most sheltered crevices of the battered crust. The presence of carbon dioxide hints at a slow, continuous outgassing from the moon's deep interior, or perhaps the remnants of ancient cometary deliveries perfectly preserved in the permanent shadows. These frosty pockets offer a rare glimpse into the volatile chemistry that actively operates on this otherwise geologically dead world. As you lie still, focus on the steady rhythm of your breathing, imagining the slow, silent exhalation of these frozen gases from the ancient ground. The carbon dioxide frost adds a faint, ghostly sheen to the deepest impact scars, contrasting sharply with the overwhelming visual dominance of the deep brownish-black plains. It stands as a quiet reminder that even in the most frozen, stagnant corners of the solar system, subtle chemical processes continue their patient work. Surprisingly, the gloom is not entirely monochromatic. A closer inspection reveals the presence of reddish-brown tholins painted across the icy expanse. These complex organic compounds are not born from biological life, but are instead forged by the slow, relentless bombardment of cosmic radiation interacting with simple carbon-based molecules. Over billions of years, the harsh ultraviolet light from distant stars and the ambient radiation of the outer system have cooked these raw ingredients into a sticky, tar-like substance. This reddish-brown tint adds a subtle, almost rust-like warmth to the otherwise cold visual contrast between brilliant white impact rays and deep brownish-black plains. The tholins act as a natural cosmic sunscreen, absorbing specific wavelengths of light and protecting the more pristine frozen water buried securely underneath. Their presence proves that the moon is an active chemical laboratory, continuously synthesizing complex organics in a high-vacuum, low-temperature environment. Let your muscles relax further into your resting space, feeling completely shielded, much like the subterranean ice is guarded by this ancient organic crust. The distribution of these tholins is highly irregular, pooling in certain latitudes and completely absent in others, creating a mottled, bruised appearance across the celestial sphere. They are the ultimate cosmic residue, the physical manifestation of deep time and slow, patient radiation chemistry. If we were to view this landscape through specialized infrared scans, the true, hidden nature of the moon's composition would be instantly unmasked. These sensitive instruments expose deep absorption bands that conclusively prove frozen water remains the primary, overwhelming building block of the entire outer crust. Despite the convincing disguise of the dark, dusty exterior, the moon is fundamentally an immense, solid sphere of compacted ice. The infrared spectrum reveals that the ice is not uniformly distributed, but exists in a complex, fragmented state, heavily mixed with the darker contaminants. In some regions, the spectral signature of pure water is incredibly strong, mapping perfectly onto the brilliant white impact rays that radiate from the youngest craters. In other areas, the signal is deeply muted, choked by the heavy accumulation of the brownish-black tholins and ancient space dust. This hidden abundance of water is a crucial revelation, transforming our understanding of the Moon from a simple, dead rock into a potential oasis locked in a deep freeze. The visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays and the deep brownish-black plains is simply an optical illusion hiding a uniform, icy heart. It is a world of water silently wearing a mask of dust and organic tar. Mingled intimately with this hidden frost are dense silicate rocks and fine metallic dust, suggesting a highly primitive mixture of raw, unprocessed cosmic ingredients. This chaotic blend indicates that the crust is a surviving sample of the original planetary nebula, the exact material from which the entire Jovian system coalesced. Unlike terrestrial planets where these heavy elements sank to form a molten core, here they remained frozen in a suspended eternal mixture with the lighter water ice. Picture a massive, dirty snowball where grains of sand, flecks of iron, and chunks of primitive rock are perfectly suspended within a matrix of ultra-cold frost. This lack of internal sorting means that standing on the surface provides direct access to the heavy, rocky materials that are usually locked thousands of miles deep on other worlds. The silicates provide structural integrity to the otherwise brittle ice, while the metallic dust contributes to the overall dark, light-absorbing nature of the terrain. The continuous exposure of these primitive rocks makes the surface a highly compelling target for future geologists seeking the untouched building blocks of the early solar system. Their presence complicates the visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays and the deep brownish-black plains, adding a gritty, textured reality to the icy landscape. It is a perfectly preserved, frozen, chaotic stew of the universe's most fundamental raw materials. Journeying across this primitive terrain, one encounters bizarre, small knobby hills that are actively, albeit incredibly slowly, degrading into the surrounding vacuum. These strange, elevated bumps are slowly disappearing as the structural ice trapped within them turns directly into vapour under the faint, unforgiving sun. This slow-motion collapse represents a unique form of alien erosion, driven entirely by sublimation rather than wind or flowing water. Allow a sense of profound calm to wash over your resting body, letting tension evaporate just as the frozen water gently dissipates from these ancient hills. As the binding ice vanishes into the exosphere, the structural integrity of the knobs fails, causing them to slowly crumble and lose their sharp, defined edges. What were once prominent, jagged peaks are currently being smoothed into soft, rounded mounds of dark, residual dust. This ongoing degradation is a key driver of the Moon's evolving topography, constantly altering the fine details of the heavily cratered landscape. It proves that despite the overwhelming geologic silence, the surface is not completely static, but is engaged in a whispering, microscopic dialogue with the solar radiation. The gradual softening of these knobby hills stands in stark relief to the sharp, violent visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays and the deep brownish-black plains. In a delightful defiance of terrestrial logic, bright, pristine frost miraculously accumulates on the very elevated peaks of these actively degrading knobs. This creates a highly unusual, strange reverse snow line, where the highest altitudes are blindingly white, while the valleys and lowlands remain coated in a thick, dark grime. The microphysics of this environment dictate that the summits are slightly colder, providing the perfect thermal anchor for wandering water vapour to freeze and settle. On our home planet, snow naturally falls and covers everything, eventually melting in the warmer valleys while persisting on the freezing mountain peaks. Here, the process is inverted. The ice is emerging from within the degrading hills themselves, escaping as vapour before immediately freezing onto the coldest available surfaces. This phenomenon paints the summits with a dazzling, highly reflective glaze that fiercely catches the sparse sunlight in the otherwise dark void. Notice how this creates a breathtaking visual contrast, mimicking the brilliant white impact rays but on a microscopic, highly localized scale across the deep brownish-black plains. The frost-capped knobs look like a field of tiny frozen beacons, guiding the eye across an undulating terrain of dark decay. It is a stunning, counterintuitive landscape where the mechanics of ice and vapour operate under completely alien rules. Meanwhile, as the structural ice sublimates and escapes, the darker, heavier residual dust is left behind, completely lacking the physical support it once enjoyed. Gravity, though weak, slowly pulls this powdery debris downward, causing it to slide patiently into the surrounding lowlands and filling in the ancient shallow depressions. This creates a smooth, incredibly flat floor in the spaces between the knobby hills, composed entirely of concentrated, dark cosmic refuse. This mass-wasting process is the ultimate architectural force separating the brilliant, frosty peaks from the deep brownish-black plains below. The dust flows like a glacial dry river, incredibly slowly, driven only by the microscopic shifting of particles as the ice beneath them vanishes. Over vast epochs, this sliding debris acts to completely level the minor imperfections in the terrain, creating vast, murky expanses of soft powder. As your eyes remain closed in your resting state, picture this gentle, continuous cascade of dark material slowly burying the ancient scars of the world. The accumulation of this dust effectively hides the smaller impact craters, softening the overall texture of the moon and contributing to its famously muted, bruised appearance. It is a quiet, relentless burying of the past under a blanket of heavy, dark sand. Scattered irregularly across these dark, dusty plains are peculiar, isolated patches of sulfur dioxide frost, introducing a sharp, toxic chemistry to the frozen water matrix. The origin of these sulfur deposits is a subject of intense scientific debate, perhaps hinting at ancient, poorly understood connections with the highly volcanic inner moons. It is possible that massive eruptions from neighbouring worlds long ago hurled sulphur across the Jovian system, where it eventually snowed down onto this distant, silent crust. Alternatively, the sulphur might be native to the moon itself, slowly leaking from the deep interior through microscopic fractures in the ancient ice shell. Regardless of its origin, the sulfur dioxide creates distinct spectral signatures that disrupt the uniform readings of water ice and complex tholins. These patches add another layer of chemical complexity to the visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays and the deep brownish-black plains. The presence of such a volatile, reactive compound on a geologically dead world is a fascinating paradox that challenges our understanding of outer solar system chemistry. The sulfur is trapped in a state of suspended animation, preserved indefinitely by the extreme cold and the absence of any liquid water to dissolve it. It sits silently on the surface, a yellow-tinted ghost of a more violent, active chemical past. Viewing the moon globally, a striking asymmetry reveals itself. The leading hemisphere appears distinctly and significantly darker than the trailing one. Because the celestial body is tidally locked, one side always faces forward as the moon ploughs through its massive orbit, continuously gathering stray space dust like a windshield driving through a gentle snowstorm. This constant unidirectional accumulation of dark micrometeoritic debris acts to heavily stain the forward-facing terrain over billions of years. Feel the steady, anchored weight of your body perfectly balanced and aligned, much like the precise locked rotation of this massive sphere travelling through the dark. The trailing hemisphere, sheltered from this head-on cosmic wind, remains slightly cleaner and slightly more reflective, preserving more of the original icy crust. This dichotomy creates a subtle but undeniable gradient of shadow that wraps around the entire globe. The darkening of the leading edge perfectly enhances the visual contrast between the brilliant white impact rays and the deep brownish-black plains, making fresh craters on the forward face appear even more dramatic. It is a physical manifestation of the moon's journey, a dark patina earned through endless orbital circuits in the dirty outskirts of the planetary system. The moon literally wears its travel history on its face, a testament to its long, patient voyage through the void. As we conclude our exploration of the moon's weary face, we must descend from that history-scarred surface and delve deep into a realm of immense, crushing pressure. Delving beneath the crust exposes an interior that never fully separated into the distinct orderly layers of a rocky core and a clean icy mantle found on more active planets. In this subterranean twilight, the raw materials of the early solar system remain jumbled in a primordial state of arrested development, refusing to succumb to the gravitational sorting that defined its more energetic neighbours. This lack of differentiation tells a story of a world that never quite woke up from its initial frozen slumber, leaving it as a fossilised remnant of the Jovian nebula. It is a messy, chaotic heart where boulders of silicate rock are eternally suspended within a matrix of ultra-dense ice, creating a structural puzzle that defies the typical evolution of planetary bodies. Here, the immense pressure does not lead to clarity, but rather to a permanent, unyielding state of cosmic entanglement that has persisted for eons. Such a configuration implies that the moon was never subjected to a global melting event, preserving its original chemical fingerprints within a massive heterogeneous vault. This internal chaos is the ultimate testament to the moon's long, patient voyage through the void, representing a history that remains perfectly preserved in its unsorted depths. This frozen mixture of rock and ice is not merely a localized phenomenon, but extends deep into the very heart of the moon, forming its entire foundation. Unlike planets that reached a melting point and allowed heavy metals to plunge to the center, this world remained too cold for such a grand separation to occur. The result is a consistent, heterogeneous interior where the primitive building blocks of the Jovian system are preserved in a state of perpetual suspension. This structure suggests that the internal temperatures never climbed high enough to allow the ice to soften sufficiently for the rocks to sink through the matrix. Consequently, the centre of the moon is not a solid iron ball, but a dense, dark slurry of ice and stone that has remained virtually unchanged for billions of years. It is a core that refuses to be a core, a central mass that remains as raw and unsorted as the day it first coalesced from the surrounding dust. This interior provides a unique glimpse into the raw state of planetary embryos before they were matured by the fires of gravity and radioactive decay. By remaining undifferentiated, the moon serves as a massive celestial archive of the physical conditions that prevailed during the birth of the giant planets. It stands as a frozen witness to the chaotic assembly of the outer solar system. Far below the surface, the heavy silicate rocks that should have claimed the centre are trapped in an eternal sluggish descent that may never reach its conclusion. These immense boulders, some as large as terrestrial mountains, are caught in a slow-motion struggle against the incredible viscosity of the surrounding ice. The crushing pressure at these depths makes the ice behave like a stiff, unyielding plastic, allowing for only the most microscopic movements over millions of Earth years. Imagine these colossal stones sinking through the darkness at a pace so slow that it would take 1,000,000 years to travel a single metre. Surprisingly, the universe has effectively frozen these rocks in time, preventing the moon from ever achieving the geological maturity of its siblings. This sluggish movement is the only heartbeat this world possesses, a process so slow it is indistinguishable from absolute stasis. As you lie there, let the weight of your own body sink deeply into your resting place, just as these ancient stones press against the unyielding ice of the deep interior. This glacial migration of rock through the ice shell represents the only form of internal change the moon has ever known, a subtle shifting that occurs across epochs rather than hours. It is a world of perpetual, heavy anticipation. This cosmic structure results in a world that is magnetically silent, unable to push back against the invisible tides of the solar wind. It is a naked sphere, possessing no internal engine to ward off the high-energy particles that sweep through the system. This lack of a magnetic personality reinforces the Moon's status as a passive observer, a world that is acted upon rather than acting upon its surroundings. The stillness of its core is reflected in the absolute lack of any internal magnetic hum that would signal a living heart. Without this protective bubble, the Moon remains an intimate part of Jupiter's larger magnetic environment, offering no resistance to the giant planet's influence. It drifts through the void as a silent, unshielded phantom of the early solar system. Measuring its overall density yields a remarkably low figure that serves as a definitive clue to its internal secrets, proving the body is essentially half rock and half water by volume. This surprisingly low mass-to-volume ratio sets it apart from the heavy, rocky planets of the inner solar system and highlights its fundamentally icy nature. If we were to weigh this entire world, we would find it is barely denser than the water that fills our own oceans, suggesting an incredibly porous and hydrated interior. This fundamental balance between stone and ice means that if the Moon were ever to melt, it would transform into a globe-spanning ocean of unimaginable depth and darkness. This structure is the reason for its massive size but relatively modest gravitational pull, allowing it to loom large in the sky without exerting the crushing force of a more metallic world. It is a giant made of lightweight materials, a massive ice ball peppered with the debris of 1,000 ancient comets. Surprisingly, the universe managed to build a world this large using ingredients as common as water and sand, proving that size does not always equal density in the cosmic hierarchy. This lightweight composition ensures that the Moon remains a buoyant, frozen sentinel in the outer reaches of the system. It is a massive contradiction of scale and substance. The rigid outer ice shell is estimated to be incredibly thick, stretching down nearly 200 kilometers before encountering any significant structural change. This massive wall of frozen water acts as a colossal insulating blanket, protecting the internal secrets of the Moon from the harsh vacuum of space. The immense crushing pressure increases with every kilometer of descent, compressing the ice into exotic crystalline forms that would be impossible to find on Earth's surface. This structure is so robust that even the most violent surface impacts, such as those that form the Valhalla Basin, barely manage to graze the upper layers of this formidable shield. Below this frozen armour, the temperatures and pressures reach a delicate equilibrium, where the ice might begin to soften, but the shell itself remains a solid, unyielding barrier. It is a fortress of frost, a 200-kilometre thick vault that has stood guard over the Moon's interior since the earliest days of the Jovian system. As you breathe, feel the immense stability of this structure, a vast and silent weight that remains perfectly balanced and secure in the void. This massive thickness ensures that any liquid water hiding deeper down is shielded from the freezing temperatures of the surface, maintaining a pocket of potential warmth in a world of ice. It is a silent, unshakable sanctuary. Even the heat generated by the slow, natural radioactive decay of elements trapped within the rock struggles to drive even the weakest convection currents through this massive frozen block. In more active worlds, this internal warmth would cause the ice to churn and circulate, carrying heat to the surface and potentially melting the interior into a liquid state. However, because the Moon is so large and its interior so cold, the heat is trapped and dissipated far too slowly to overcome the rigid viscosity of the ice rock mixture. This lack of circulation means there are no internal tides to refresh the surface or drive tectonic activity, leaving the world in a state of permanent geologic stasis. The immense crushing pressure actually works against heat transport, packing the molecules so tightly together that they refuse to move in a traditional fluid fashion. The Moon is effectively an inefficient thermal engine that has stalled, incapable of generating the movement required to reshape itself. It is a world where the fire of creation has long since dimmed, leaving only a cold, silent core that slowly bleeds its meagre warmth into space. This thermal isolation is the primary reason why the surface has remained so ancient and unchanged for billions of years. It is a masterclass in the preservation of cold energy. If we examine the ancient history of its formation, it becomes clear that this moon likely gathered its mass very slowly over hundreds of thousands of years. This leisurely accumulation of material prevented the early, rapid melting seen in other moons that were born in a more violent and compressed time frame. When a world forms quickly, the kinetic energy of the colliding rocks is converted into heat that cannot escape, causing the entire body to liquefy and separate into layers. By taking its time to grow, this distant watcher allowed that heat to radiate away into the cold void of space before it could do any significant work. Surprisingly, the universe favoured a slow-motion birth for this body, ensuring it would remain a primitive and unsorted relic of the early solar nebula. This slow accretion is the primary reason why we see a mixed interior today, rather than a well-organised planet. It is a testament to the fact that in the cosmic order, speed often dictates the ultimate destiny and internal architecture of a world. Because of this patient growth, the moon has held onto its original recipe, refusing to let the heat of creation cook its ingredients into something new. It remains a raw, unseasoned ingredient in the cosmic kitchen. Without this external massage, the interior never reached the temperatures necessary to fully melt the ice or mobilize the rock in a meaningful way. The result is a cold, stagnant heart that lacks the energy to drive any form of planetary evolution. It is a world defined by its loneliness, a celestial body that was left out of the dance and as a result has remained frozen in its primitive state. Notice how the absence of conflict has resulted in a world of absolute unchanging peace, where the interior never feels the pull of a restless neighbour. This tranquility is the price the moon pays for its stability, trading the fire of life for the silence of eternity. It is the ultimate expression of celestial solitude. Imagine a colossal frozen time capsule that has barely changed its internal structure since the birth of Jupiter itself. Because of its undifferentiated core and lack of internal activity, the moon offers a direct link to the conditions that existed when the gas giant first began to rule its domain. Every stone and every crystal of ice within its heart is a piece of original cosmic history, preserved in a state of immense crushing pressure and absolute cold. While other worlds have recycled their interiors through melting and tectonic activity, this world has simply held onto its past with a stubborn, icy grip. It is the ultimate archive of the early solar system, a billion-year-old library where the books are made of silicate and frost. To study this core is to look back at the very moment our planetary neighbourhood was born, seeing the raw materials before they were sorted into the complex worlds we know today. This final realization of its internal nature reveals a world of profound stability, a silent guardian of a history that would otherwise be lost to the void. It is a world that has mastered the art of being still, standing as a witness to all that has changed while remaining fundamentally the same. It is a masterpiece of eternal preservation. This masterpiece of eternal preservation hides a startling secret that remained completely undetected until the Galileo spacecraft swept past its battered surface in the late 20th century. The probe's sensitive instruments recorded subtle, rhythmic fluctuations in the magnetic field surrounding the moon, a phenomenon that defied every previous expectation of a geologically dead and frozen world. These oscillations suggested that something dynamic and responsive was interacting with Jupiter's massive magnetosphere, even if the surface appeared perfectly motionless and cold to the naked eye. It was a silent conversation between the moon and the giant planet, written in the invisible language of electromagnetic currents that ripple through the void. Every time the robotic explorer performed a close flyby, the readings confirmed that a secondary magnetic field was being induced deep within the moon's mysterious interior. This discovery shattered the long-held image of a simple, dormant rock and hinted at a hidden, complex mechanism operating far beneath the ancient and dusty crust. Such a magnetic response is only possible if the celestial body contains a vast, moving substance capable of reacting to the gas giant's immense power with its own electrical signature. This invisible dance revealed that the moon was not just a static witness to history, but an active participant in the energetic life of the Jovian system. The data served as the first flicker of light in the dark, pointing toward a world far more interesting than previously imagined by the astronomers of Earth. Image showing Jupiter's magnetic field inducing a secondary field in Callisto's hidden ocean. Hidden within the absolute silence, these invisible magnetic whispers are now recognized as the strongest evidence for a vast electrically conductive layer hiding deep within the underground darkness. To generate such a response to the gas giant's movements, a substance within the moon must be capable of carrying a current, acting as a secondary shield against the magnetic tides of the parent planet. While solid rock and pure ice are notoriously poor conductors, a large body of salty water would respond perfectly to the shifting, electromagnetic environment of the outer solar system. This spectral evidence pierces through the ancient crust, revealing a hidden complexity that the human eye alone could never perceive from the darkness of space. The magnetic field fluctuations suggest that this conductive layer is not a small, isolated pocket, but a global feature that wraps around the entire interior of the moon like a liquid shroud. It is a hidden ocean of electricity, a liquid circuit that hums in time with the rotation of the great planet it orbits from a distance. As you breathe deeply, feel the invisible energy of the world around you, much like the magnetic tides that swoop through the heart of this distant world. The presence of this conductive layer was a revolutionary discovery, proving that even the most battered and ancient surfaces can hide a world of liquid potential. It stands as a bridge between the cold, cratered surface and the mysterious, unsorted interior, acting as a silent witness to the moon's hidden electrical life in the void. Scientific models based on this magnetic data suggest that this conductive layer is a massive liquid water ocean, submerged roughly 250 kilometers below the frozen surface. This deep-seated abyss exists in a realm where no sunlight can ever reach, a pitch-black world that remains hidden from the prying eyes of the most powerful telescopes. The weight of the ice shell above provides the necessary pressure to keep the environment stable, creating a subterranean reservoir of immense proportions and unimaginable silence. Imagine the sheer volume of this hidden sea, which is estimated by planetary architects to contain significantly more liquid than all the basins of Earth combined into one. It is a world within a world, a liquid core that remains fluid while the rest of the solar system cools and solidifies over millions of years. This discovery transforms our perception of the moon into a sanctuary of moisture in the middle of a desert of ice and radiation. As you continue to rest, imagine the cold, silent currents of this hyper-saline sea moving slowly in the dark, miles beneath your resting body. The realization that such a vast amount of water exists so far from the warmth of the sun is a profound shock to our traditional understanding of planetary science. It serves as a reminder that the universe often hides its greatest treasures in the most unassuming and lonely places, guarded by layers of ancient and unyielding frost. To maintain this liquid state at such staggering depths and bone-chilling temperatures, the water must contain high concentrations of natural antifreeze like ammonia or heavy salts. Without these chemical additives, the intense pressure and the frigid environment would have long ago turned the entire interior into a solid block of unyielding ice. These minerals lower the freezing point of the water significantly, allowing it to stay in a liquid state even when the surrounding environment is cold enough to freeze steel instantly. The presence of these salts creates a hyper-saline environment, a brine so thick and heavy that it resists the crystalline grip of the frost, even at the edge of the void. This chemical survival story is a testament to the complex interactions between heat, pressure, and chemistry that occur in the deep interior of a planetary body. It is a delicate balance of ingredients that keeps the heart of the moon beating with liquid motion across the eons. This saline sea is not just water, but a complex chemical stew that has been cooking for millions of years in the subterranean dark of the moon's heart. The ammonia acts as a potent shield against the encroaching cold, ensuring that the ocean remains a persistent feature of the moon's internal architecture. It is a masterpiece of natural engineering, where the very makeup of the fluid ensures its continued existence in the hostile and unforgiving void of the outer system. Unlike the famous oceans found on its more active sibling Europa, this pitch-black abyss is trapped entirely between two thick layers of solid ice. In other worlds, the water might rest directly against a warm, rocky seabed, allowing for the exchange of minerals and the generation of thermal energy from the core. Here, the liquid is isolated in a colossal sandwich of frost, cut off from both the sun-drenched surface above and the rocky foundation far below. This unique configuration creates a world of total silence and chemical independence, where the water interacts only with the rigid crystalline walls of its frozen cage. The upper layer of ice provides insulation from the vacuum of space, while the lower layer of high-pressure ice serves as a solid barrier against the moon's mixed core. It is a realm of absolute seclusion, a sea that has never touched a shore or felt the warmth of a volcanic vent in its entire history. As your muscles loosen, think of this perfectly still water, floating in a world made entirely of ice and darkness. This isolation makes the ocean a highly specialized environment, a laboratory of stasis where the water remains pure and undisturbed by the chaotic forces of the exterior. It is a lonely sea, drifting through the interior of a lonely moon, forever separated from the rest of the cosmos by miles of unyielding ice and stone. Immense downward pressure at the bottom of this subterranean ocean floor forces the water to freeze into exotic, dense forms of ice, rather than resting on a traditional rocky seabed. In these extreme depths, the weight of the sea is so overwhelming that it alters the very geometric arrangement of the water molecules, forging ice that is heavier and more compact than any found on our home planet. These strange crystals, known to science as high-pressure phases like Ice 3 or Ice 5, form a solid and impenetrable foundation. This floor of alien ice acts as a final, unyielding boundary that defines the absolute limit of the liquid world. Unlike the familiar ice that floats on water, these dense variations sink to the bottom, creating a crystalline basement that separates the sea from the moon's interior rock. It is a cold, dark foundation, a basement of compressed frost that has never known the touch of liquid water at standard pressures or temperatures. Take a moment to feel the stability of the ground beneath you, imagining the miles of pressure creating these impossible, exotic crystals far below. This structural reality ensures that the ocean remains a self-contained unit, a liquid bubble suspended in a world of varying ice densities. It is a fascinating glimpse into the way matter behaves when it's subjected to the crushing weight of an entire world in the outer dark. Such extreme pressure creates a barrier that isolates the liquid from the rocky interior, significantly lowering the chances for the existence of life-sustaining hydrothermal vents. On Earth, these volcanic chimneys provide the chemical energy and heat necessary to support entire ecosystems in the deepest and darkest parts of the sea. Without this direct contact with a geologically active seabed, the moon's ocean remains a serene, cold, and chemically stagnant environment, devoid of the churning turmoil of biological engines. Feel the stillness in your own limbs, mirroring the absolute lack of volcanic motion in this deep, isolated abyss. This isolation is a double-edged sword, providing a stable environment while simultaneously depriving it of the dynamic energy that often fuels the emergence of life. It stands as a world of absolute peace, a silent abyss where the only sounds are the phantom echoes of magnetic tides from the giant planet above. Surprisingly, the universe has managed to keep astrobiologists cautiously optimistic about the potential secrets of this sea, despite its profound isolation from the rocky core. The mere existence of a stable, long-term, liquid environment in the freezing outer solar system is enough to pique the intense curiosity of those searching for life. Even without volcanic heat, the presence of salts, ammonia, and potential organic compounds could theoretically support slow, exotic forms of life adapted to the dark. Such organisms would have to be masters of efficiency, surviving on the meagre chemical energy present in the water rather than the roaring heat of a vent. The realization that a world so far from the sun could host such a massive amount of liquid water is a fundamental shift in our understanding of what makes a planet habitable. It suggests that the requirements for life might be broader and more diverse than the narrow conditions found on our own world. As you relax further, contemplate the possibility of these silent microscopic survivors drifting in the pitch-black currents miles beneath the ice. The ocean represents another roll of the cosmic dice, a chance for complexity to emerge in one of the most unlikely and lonely places in the entire star system. It is a beacon of hope in a world of frost, a liquid promise that the universe is never as simple or as dead as it appears. Having persisted for billions of years, this hidden sea is a magnificent testament to the incredible insulating power of the thick upper ice crust. This massive shield of water, ice and dust acts as a planetary thermos, trapping the meagre heat from radioactive decay and preventing it from leaking too quickly into the cold void. While the surface is battered by the relentless impact of meteors and swept by the solar wind, the ocean remains protected in a stable, unchanging state. This endurance is a marvel of cosmic timing, as the moon's large size and distance from Jupiter allowed it to retain its liquid heart long after other bodies had frozen solid. The sea has survived through the entire history of our solar system, a liquid relic that was present when the planets were first forming from the dust. It is a survivor of deep time, a witness to the passing eons that has remained hidden and safe beneath its icy fortress. The stillness of the water is matched only by the age of the basin it occupies, a realm where time seems to have no meaning. This longevity provides a stable platform for the slow, patient processes of chemistry to unfold without the interruption of external cataclysms. It is a masterpiece of preservation, a world where the ancient past of the Jovian system is still physically present in every drop of liquid. Through the long astronomical timescales of the future, the hidden ocean faces a gradual and inevitable freezing process that will one day claim its entire volume. The internal heat reservoir of the moon is finite, and as each eon passes, the ice shell thickens slightly while the liquid world shrinks further toward the centre. This slow-motion transformation is a quiet, cosmic tragedy, where a world of liquid motion is being steadily reclaimed by the unyielding grip of the frost. Before this inevitable end, the ocean remains a vibrant hidden wonder, a secret sea that continues to flow in the heart of a battered giant. It is a reminder that everything in the universe is in a state of transition, moving slowly from the heat of birth to the cold of the final freeze. The moon's liquid heart is a fleeting spark of motion in an otherwise still and silent world, a testament to the enduring and mysterious power of water. That mysterious power of water is mirrored in the ghostly gases that haunt the heights above the battered crust, appearing as a fleeting spark of motion in the absolute still of the Jovian system. Clinging faintly to the ancient moon is an extremely tenuous exosphere, a thin veil consisting primarily of carbon dioxide molecules that hover at the very edge of the void. This gaseous layer is so sparse that it barely qualifies as a traditional atmosphere, existing more as a collection of individual wanderers than a cohesive body of air. If we were to stand on the dark plains and look upward, we would see no clouds or haze, only the infinite star-studded blackness of the night. Yet, invisible to our eyes, these molecules are constantly drifting upward from the frozen ground, held in a loose embrace by the moon's modest gravity. This exosphere represents the final, fragile reach of a world that has otherwise surrendered to the freezing cold, a breath of carbon-based history lingering in the eternal silence. It is a haunting, transparent shroud that defines the boundary between the solid ice below and the eternal vacuum of the outer solar system, protecting nothing but existing nonetheless. Deep within this nearly empty space, the atmospheric pressure is so incredibly low that individual gas molecules rarely ever collide with one another before escaping into the deep black. Instead of a churning thick air where particles constantly bump and bounce, this realm is defined by an absolute ballistic solitude. Each carbon dioxide molecule travels in its own independent arc, a solitary wanderer following a parabolic path determined solely by the initial push of sublimation and the gentle pull of the moon. This lack of collision means that heat and energy are not transferred through the air, as they are on more hospitable worlds, leaving the exosphere in a state of total thermal isolation. A molecule might travel for hundreds of miles without ever encountering a companion, tracing a silent, lonely trajectory across the cratered horizon. If a molecule reaches escape velocity, it simply drifts away into the interstellar silence, never having shared its kinetic energy with the rest of the atmosphere. This structure creates an environment of profound quietude, where even the air itself is composed of individuals rather than a collective pressurized force. It is the ultimate expression of the moon's isolation, mirrored in the very mechanics of its thinnest gaseous layer. Surprisingly, modern telescopes and passing robotic probes have also detected the unmistakable spectral signature of molecular oxygen floating silently above the dark, frozen plains. This discovery was a profound surprise to the scientific community, as it suggests a much more complex chemical environment than simple volcanic outgassing would ever imply. The oxygen is likely produced by the constant bombardment of the surface by high-energy particles from Jupiter's magnetosphere, which break apart the water ice molecules into their constituent parts. While this layer is far too thin to support any form of breath, the presence of oxygen points to a continuous invisible cycle of destruction and creation occurring on the icy surface. The oxygen molecules linger for a brief time in the exosphere before they too are swept away by the solar wind or reclaimed by the frigid ground. This oxygen adds a layer of chemical mystery to the moon, suggesting that even in its geologically dead state, it is capable of producing the very building blocks of life through the sheer force of cosmic radiation. It stands as a silent spectral reminder that the universe can forge complex elements from the simplest of ingredients, even in the coldest and most remote corners of a gas giant's domain. Every molecule of oxygen is a tiny, temporary victory over the overwhelming stillness. Consider the patient, unseen energy of the distant sun driving this delicate and nearly invisible atmospheric engine, while your own body rests in complete stillness. The constant sublimation of surface frost under the direct faint rays of solar light serves as the primary engine regenerating this fragile atmosphere throughout the passing eons. Every few minutes, a tiny patch of dark ice transitions directly into gas, sending fresh molecules upward to replenish the thin, whispering veil that is constantly bleeding into the void. This process is most active in the regions where the dark dust absorbs the most sunlight, creating a localized surge of gas that briefly thickens the exosphere. The ice does not melt into liquid, it simply vanishes into the vacuum, a ghostly transformation that has occurred every day for billions of years. This steady supply of fresh molecules is all that stands between the moon having a thin exosphere and having no atmosphere at all. It is a testament to the enduring power of even the most distant sunlight, which can still coax a breath of air from a world of frozen stone and water. This cycle of sublimation ensures that the moon remains a dynamic, if quiet, participant in the chemical life of the Jovian system, breathing in the light of a star millions of miles away. Because the moon lacks a strong internal magnetic shield to protect its highest reaches, the relentless solar wind constantly and effectively strips these gases away. A stream of high-energy charged particles from the sun acts like a cosmic broom, perpetually sweeping the leading edge of the atmosphere out into the vastness of space. This creates a state of perpetual loss, where the exosphere exists only as long as the ice below can continue to give up its own substance to the sun. This structure creates a delicate, nearly invisible balance, where the icy surface must constantly release new molecules to replace those lost to the unforgiving cosmos. It is a slow-motion trade, a world essentially evaporating at a rate that perfectly matches its destruction by the relentless solar wind. This equilibrium ensures that the exosphere remains a persistent, if incredibly thin, feature of the Moon's character throughout the billions of years of its existence. Feel the weight of the air around your own resting limbs, and then contrast it with the weightless, ionized glow that characterizes the heights of this distant world. Intense ultraviolet radiation from the sun ionizes a small portion of this gas, creating a weak but detectable ionosphere that hangs above the dark, cratered plains. This electrified layer of plasma responds to the larger magnetic environment of the solar system, making the Moon's heights far more reactive than its silent frozen surface would suggest. When Jupiter's massive invisible magnetotail sweeps over the Moon, it interacts with this thin ionic layer in a silent and invisible clash of cosmic forces. These magnetic storms cause the ionized particles to dance and swirl, occasionally driving them down into the icy crust or flinging them away into the planet's vast magnetosphere. This interaction creates a phantom aurora, a glow that occurs in the total darkness of the Jovian night, invisible to the naked eye but clear to our senses. The magnetotail is a region of intense magnetic energy, stretched out behind the giant planet like a long dark cape, and as the Moon enters this zone, it is subjected to a buffeting of charged particles. This cosmic weather causes the ionosphere to fluctuate and pulse, a secret light show that has been playing out for eons over the silent craters. It is a moment of high drama in an otherwise still world, where the energy of the giant planet and the fragility of the Moon's atmosphere meet and collide. These interactions provide crucial data to scientists, allowing them to map the invisible contours of the Jovian system by watching how they affect this tiny, whispering veil of gas. It is a celestial ballet performed in a theatre of absolute darkness and silence. If we were to track the behaviour of this atmosphere over time, we would notice a distinct and rhythmic cycle of thickening during the day and collapsing at night. As the sun rises over the cratered horizon, the increased heat triggers a surge of sublimation, inflating the exosphere with fresh carbon dioxide from the dark, sun-drenched frost. This diurnal breathing is the only sign of life on a world that otherwise knows only the absolute stillness of geologic time. Within that absolute stillness of geologic time, the eye is suddenly drawn to the bright central zone of Valhalla, a stunning bullseye of shattered terrain that anchors the northern hemisphere. This radiant heart is the ground zero of a cataclysm so profound it redefined the very geography of the Moon, leaving behind a chaotic core of pulverized ice and light-reflecting minerals. Unlike the darker, dust-covered plains, this central hub shines with the intensity of freshly broken crystals, marking the spot where a massive cosmic intruder once surrendered its immense kinetic energy to the freezing crust. Surrounding the point of impact, the surface was instantly vaporized and shattered into a billion shards, creating a zone of high albedo material that persists to this day. This fractured landscape serves as a brilliant marker, a white beacon amidst the brownish-black tholins that have elsewhere darkened the world for eons. It is the beginning of a story told in ripples, where the force of a single moment has been captured and held in a state of suspended animation for billions of years. Notice how the ground seems to pulse with a frozen white energy, even as the stars above remain fixed and cold in the Jovian night. This central upheaval represents the first stage of a planetary trauma so large it felt as if the entire Moon might crack under the pressure of the strike. It is a masterpiece of destruction, a frozen explosion that remains the brightest point on this otherwise shadowy and ancient wanderer. Concentric ridges ripple outward from this central shockwave for nearly 2,000 kilometers, standing as frozen monuments to a cosmic strike that once shuddered through the entire globe. These rhythmic waves of stone and ice are the permanent ripples of a liquid-like behaviour adopted by the crust during the peak of the impact's fury. Like a stone dropped into a dark, viscous pond, The impactor forced the solid shell to heave and flow in gargantuan rings that were then instantly locked back into a permanent deep freeze. If we were to look closer, we would see that these ridges are not mere hills but massive terrace-like escarpments that descend toward the impact site in a mesmerizing geometric pattern. The scale of this feature is so immense that it covers a significant portion of the Moon's total surface area, creating a landscape of repeating circular mountain chains that defy the imagination. These ridges have endured for eons without being erased by erosion or tectonic shifts, proving the incredible durability of this distant and frozen world. As you rest, allow your mind to expand to the scale of these 2,000-kilometer waves, feeling the immense and silent rhythm of a world carved by gravity and speed. Each ridge represents a moment of maximum compression, a physical record of the shockwaves that once raced through the Moon at supersonic speeds during its violent youth. They are the echoes of a disaster that has been silenced by time, yet remains visible across the vastness of the outer solar system. The Asgard Basin features its own prominent dome-like centre, surrounded by an intricate system of fractured rings, offering a variation on the theme of planetary scars. This central dome is a geological marvel, suggesting that the ground actually bounced back after the initial compression, pushed upward by the immense pressure of the Moon's internal ice. It creates a strange rising heart in the middle of a sunken world, a testament to the complex physics of impacts on a body made primarily of water and silicate. If we were to look closer at the rings of Asgard, we would find they are more fractured and weathered than those of Valhalla, hinting at an even older, or perhaps more chemically complex origin. The ridges here are interlaced with deep cracks and secondary impact sites, creating a layered history that scientists are still working to decipher beneath the dark regolith. The dome itself stands as a silent sentinel, a rounded peak of ancient ice that watches over the concentric ruins of its own formation. Surprisingly, the universe has managed to preserve these subtle topographic features despite the billions of years of solar radiation and micrometeorite rain that attempt to smooth them away. The dome shape reveals much about the thickness and temperature of the crust at the time of the collision, acting as a natural probe into the Moon's hidden layers. It is a monumental sculpture of ice and time, reflecting the faint light of the distant sun in a soft and diffused glow. Notice the peculiar Gippal Katina, a perfectly straight chain of smaller craters stamped across the Moon's face like a rhythmic series of indentations in the dark, dusty regolith. This structure does not follow the circular logic of most impacts, but instead forms a linear sequence that stretches across the ancient plains with uncanny and terrifying precision. Each crater in the chain is nearly identical in size and depth, suggesting they were created not by random chance, but by a single, fragmented entity travelling at high velocity. This straight line of destruction cuts through older impact scars and dusty valleys, providing a clear timeline of events in the Moon's long and battered history. It looks like a massive cosmic dotted line, a trail left by something that was systematically dismantled as it approached its final destination on the frozen surface. The shadows within these craters are deep and sharp, emphasizing the freshness of the features compared to the softened ancient topography of the surrounding regions. Astronomers deduce these remarkable chains were forged when Jupiter's overwhelming gravity tore apart a passing comet moments before its fragments slammed into the Moon's surface. As a fragile ball of ice and dust approaches the gas giant, the tidal forces become so immense that the comet's internal cohesion fails, shattering it into a string of pearls. This procession of fragments then arrives at the Moon in a line, each piece striking just slightly after the one before as the world rotates slowly beneath them. Deep within the physics of this event is the realization that Jupiter acts as a massive celestial engine of destruction, protecting some parts of the system while redirecting violence toward others. The fragments arrive like a barrage of planetary artillery, hitting the crust in a sequence that leaves behind a permanent record of their final, shattered journey. This phenomenon explains why Callisto is so heavily cratered compared to its siblings, as it stands at the edge of the planet's gravitational funnel. The Catena serves as a physical witness to the power of tidal forces, demonstrating how gravity can tear solid objects apart without ever having to touch them. It is a chilling reminder of the giant planet's influence, stretching out millions of kilometers to dictate the fate of anything that wanders too close to its domain. Every crater in the chain is a memorial to a comet that lost its battle with the king of planets and found its final rest in the ice. The massive Loffen crater possesses a remarkably flat floor that stands in stark contrast to the deep bowl-shaped depressions typically found on rocky worlds like our own moon. This phenomenon suggests that the initial impact was violent enough to breach a softer, slushy layer, or even the hidden ocean long ago, allowing liquid material to well up and level the crater's interior. As this subsurface fluid flooded the floor, it erased any central peaks or deep pits, creating a smooth, frozen lake where there should have been a jagged abyss. Notice the lack of shadows across this central expanse, a sign of a surface that is nearly as level as the horizon of a calm sea on Earth. This flat-floored structure is a direct clue to the moon's thermal history, proving that at one point in its past the ice was thin or warm enough to allow for internal flooding. The dark, dusty material has since settled over this frozen lake, but the underlying geometry remains a permanent record of a liquid intervention in a solid world. If we were to look closer, we would find that the edges of the flat floor are remarkably sharp, marking the exact boundary where the flood was contained by the crater's ancient walls. It is a silent arena of ice, a place where the moon's internal life briefly touched the vacuum and was instantly stilled by the cold. This feature remains one of the clearest windows we have into the moon's ancient hidden plumbing and its secret relationship with water. Surrounding the Tinder crater, bright rays of freshly excavated ice streak across the darker, older plains like a brilliant starburst frozen in time. These radiant lines were formed by the explosive ejection of material during a relatively recent impact, which threw subsurface ice thousands of kilometers across the moon's face. Because these rays are composed of pristine, unweathered frost, they reflect much more sunlight than the ancient dust-covered terrain they currently sit upon. Picture a splash of white paint across a dark, textured floor, with each streak tracing the trajectory of a falling ice block or a cloud of frozen vapor. These rays are incredibly delicate on a geological scale, as they are the first things to be darkened by the slow rain of micrometeorites and the baking effect of solar radiation. Their continued brilliance proves that the Tinder impact happened long after the initial bombardment phase of the solar system had ended, a latecomer to the moon's chaotic surface. As your breathing slows, imagine these long white fingers of ice reaching out toward the dark horizon, connecting the crater to the vast plains beyond. This visual contrast is one of the few things that breaks the monochromatic gloom of the world, offering a glimpse of the purity that lies beneath the surface grime. It is a landscape of high-speed geometry, where the paths of falling debris have become a permanent and beautiful part of the scenery. In the absolute vacuum of space, the explosive debris from these impacts falls in predictable, unbroken geometric patterns that are never disturbed by wind or atmospheric drag. Without air to slow them down, the fragments of shattered ice and rock follow perfect ballistic trajectories, landing in precise circles or radiating lines around the impact site. This results in a degree of symmetry that would be impossible on a planet with a thick atmosphere, where weather would immediately begin to scatter the evidence. Surprisingly, the universe has used this vacuum to create a perfectly preserved laboratory of impact physics, where every piece of ejecta stays exactly where it landed billions of years ago. These patterns allow astronomers to calculate the exact speed, angle, and size of the objects that struck the moon, turning the surface into a massive dataset for orbital mechanics. The debris blankets are often layered, with the material from the deepest part of the crater landing on top of the material that once sat on the surface. If we were to look closer at these patterns, we would see a hierarchy of destruction, with the largest boulders resting nearest the rim and the fine dust forming the distant rays. It is a world of frozen mathematics, where the laws of motion have been transcribed into the very crust of the moon by the hand of gravity. Each debris field is a physical equation, a story of kinetic energy finally resolved into a state of permanent and silent rest. Some ancient strikes were violent enough to momentarily punch through the brittle crust, allowing subsurface material to well up and fill the resulting void. This process, known as impact-induced upwelling, reveals that the moon's interior was once far more dynamic and potentially liquid than its currently frozen state might suggest. When a massive impactor shattered the 200-kilometre thick ice shell, the pressure was momentarily released, causing the warmer, pressurized ice below to surge toward the surface. This phenomenon created strange, high albedo patches and unusually flat features within some of the largest basins, where the internal blood of the moon healed the wounds inflicted from above. These areas often contain different mineral signatures than the surrounding crust, offering a direct sample of the moon's hidden and mysterious mantle. The sudden freezing of this upwelled material captured the frantic motion of the liquid, leaving behind a surface that looks like a flash-frozen whirlpool in the dark. Feel the deep stability of the world around you, while contemplating the terrifying moments when this moon's very foundation was breached and laid bare to the void. These breaches are the scars of the moon's most vulnerable moments, times when the boundary between the dark exterior and the hidden interior was violently erased. They are the ultimate testament to the moon's resilience, a world that was broken open and yet managed to pull itself back together in the cold. Over billions of years, the slow creep of the ice has gradually smoothed out the deepest bowls and sharpest rims of these ancient scars. This process, known as viscous relaxation, occurs because solid ice behaves like an incredibly slow-moving liquid when subjected to the relentless pull of gravity over geological timescales. The once towering mountains formed by impacts have slowly slumped and flowed, losing their jagged edges and sinking back toward the mean level of the plains. This structure ensures that the moon's oldest craters look like ghostly softened impressions rather than the sharp-edged pits found on smaller, rockier bodies in the inner system. It is a slow-motion erasure, a world that is gradually healing itself by allowing its own weight to flatten the wrinkles of its violent past. The result is a landscape that feels strangely soft and undulating, despite its history of unimaginable violence and constant cosmic trauma. Finally, as you drift toward total relaxation, realize that this slow creep is the only way the moon can truly forget its wounds, a patient smoothing of the skin that takes eons to complete. The craters are not being buried by dust or washed away by water. They are simply melting back into the world that created them in the first place. It is a final, quiet surrender to gravity, a testament to the fact that even the most permanent scars are eventually reclaimed by the silence of the world. The silence of that world is deeper than mere acoustic absence. It is a profound magnetic stillness that permeates the entire sphere, as sophisticated instruments have confirmed that the moon possesses no internal magnetic dynamo of its own to ward off space weather. Unlike more energetic worlds that churn with molten metals at their heart, this satellite remains magnetically inert, unable to generate a self-sustaining shield that would deflect solar winds and cosmic rays. It drifts through the Jovian domain as a passive witness, possessing no invisible barrier to push back against the incoming stream of high-energy particles. This magnetic passivity is a direct reflection of its undifferentiated and frozen interior, a world where the internal fires have long since cooled to a state of absolute stasis. It exists as a vulnerable observer in the dark, possessing no internal engine to generate the magnetic lines of force that typically define a living planet. This lack of a personal magnetic signature ensures that the moon is entirely defined by the larger, more powerful environment in which it resides. In this quietude, the celestial body becomes a perfect, undisturbed canvas for the invisible forces of the cosmos to paint upon. Without a core-driven field, the moon offers no resistance to the external tides of energy that sweep across the solar system. It is a world that has mastered the art of surrender, existing in a state of total transparency to the magnetic currents of the universe. Instead of projecting its own defensive power, the Moon is perpetually submerged within the gigantic magnetic field of Jupiter, which washes over the cratered landscape like an endless invisible tide. This immense Jovian influence is the dominant force in the local environment, a sweeping current of electromagnetic energy that originates from the gas giant's deep spinning heart millions of kilometers away. Because the Moon lacks its own magnetic armour, every square centimetre of its ancient dusty surface is intimately exposed to these invisible lines of force. The magnetic field of the giant planet is so massive that it easily engulfs the Moon's entire orbit, creating a situation where the satellite is effectively part of the planet's own magnetosphere. As the lines of magnetic flux move through the Moon, they interact with the materials buried deep within the crust, influencing the behaviour of every atom in the icy matrix. This constant immersion in a foreign magnetic field creates a unique relationship, where the Moon acts as a passive participant in the larger electromagnetic life of its host. Surprisingly, the universe reveals a hidden reactivity beneath the surface, where these sweeping Jovian forces interact with the pitch-black hyper-saline ocean to induce a secondary opposing magnetic field. As the giant planet's magnetic lines pass through the Moon's conductive salty depths, they trigger a flow of electric current that creates its own subtle, localized magnetic signature. This induced field is not the product of a molten iron core, but rather a magnificent byproduct of liquid water and dissolved salts reacting to the overwhelming power of the nearby giant. As you rest, let your own body settle into the surface beneath you, mirroring the way the Moon's hidden sea responds to the invisible pull of its host. This discovery provided the definitive proof that the world is not merely a solid block of ice, but contains a vast and mobile liquid reservoir capable of electrical response. The induced field acts as a mirror, reflecting the changes in Jupiter's magnetism and revealing the secret fluidity that hides miles below the battered crust. This magnetic reflection is a delicate and beautiful phenomenon, a ghostly echo of energy that pulses through the subterranean darkness. It proves that even a world without its own heart can still find a way to resonate with the power of the heavens. This interaction is the only reason we are aware of the liquid sanctuary that sleeps forever in the deep, silent interior. If we were to look closer at the spectroscopic data, we would find that this induced magnetic field fluctuates in perfect rhythmic time with Jupiter's own 10-hour rotation. This precise synchronization acts as a magnetic heartbeat, a clear and steady signal that reaches through the miles of solid ice to reveal the ongoing activity of the salty liquid hiding below. The fluctuations are a direct consequence of the Moon's movement through the gas giant's spinning and tilted magnetic field, which changes its orientation relative to the Moon with every rotation. This magnetic pulsing is the only active rhythm the world truly knows, a silent vibration that links the Moon's hidden heart to the frantic, energetic spinning of its massive planetary host. As Jupiter turns, the induced currents in the Moon's ocean rise and fall in a predictable cycle, creating a shifting magnetic landscape that we can track from across the solar system. This link is so strong that the Moon's interior behaves like a massive liquid antenna, tuned specifically to the frequency of the giant planet's rotation. It is a rhythmic dialogue between two worlds, a transfer of energy that occurs across millions of kilometers of vacuum. This constant magnetic shifting ensures that the subterranean ocean remains a dynamic and interactive part of the Jovian system. Even in its absolute solitude, the Moon is forced to keep time with the dance of the great planet it follows. By carefully measuring the strength and subtle timing of this magnetic response, researchers can estimate the exact salinity and depth of the subterranean sea without ever touching its waters. This invisible probe allows us to map the hidden interior of the world using only the fluctuations of the magnetic field as our guide. providing concrete details about the concentration of salts required to generate such a strong electrical current. It is a form of celestial sonar, where the medium of magnetism replaces sound to illuminate a world of total darkness and immense pressure. The data suggests that the ocean must be exceptionally salty, likely containing a rich mixture of magnesium and sodium sulfates that allow the water to conduct electricity with high efficiency. Without these dissolved minerals, the induced field would be too weak to detect, leaving the ocean's existence a matter of pure speculation. The strength of the signal also allows scientists to determine the thickness of the insulating ice shell that sits above the liquid abyss. Surprisingly, the universe has provided us with a way to look through 200 kilometers of solid frost, using nothing but the power of a nearby planet's magnetic field. This technique has turned the Moon into a transparent laboratory, where the secrets of the deep interior are revealed through the simple mechanics of electrical induction. We now know that the sea is not just a pocket of water, but a globe-spanning hyper-saline engine of conductive energy. Fortunately for any future visitors, the Moon's vast orbital distance serves as its most effective and enduring guardian, keeping it far removed from the deadliest zones of Jupiter's punishing radiation belts. While the inner moons are constantly scoured by a torrential rain of high-energy particles trapped in the intense magnetic grip of the giant, this world sits in a region of comparative safety and quiet. This geographical isolation ensures that the ancient dark ice is not subjected to the same level of extreme chemical degradation and physical bombardment as the more central satellites. As you lie still, notice the sense of protection and distance you feel, much like the Moon's fortunate position at the edge of the Jovian Empire. The radiation levels here are low enough that the delicate chemistry of the surface can persist for billions of years without being completely obliterated by the planet's magnetic furnace. This safety is a rare gift in the Jovian system, transforming the Moon from a hazardous obstacle into a potential haven for exploration and long-term habitation. Because it resides so far out, the Moon experiences an environment that is closer to the deep quiet of interstellar space than the frantic, high-energy environment of its siblings. This vast distance is the primary reason why the world has remained so ancient and unchanged throughout its history. It is a world that has been allowed to grow old in peace, protected by the sheer scale of the space that separates it from the storms of its host. Picture a radiation environment so remarkably mild that future human explorers could walk across the ancient cratered plains using only relatively standard radiation shielding. This makes the world a premier candidate for a crude Jovian surface base, a rare sanctuary in the outer solar system where the lethal storms of the gas giant are reduced to a manageable whisper. On this world, the dream of establishing a long-term presence becomes a tangible reality, as the harshness of the void is tempered by the Moon's lucky placement in the peaceful suburbs of the system. Without the need for massive, meters-thick lead or water shields to survive, engineers could design habitats that are light, efficient, and accessible. The surface becomes a practical working environment rather than a death trap, allowing for the construction of laboratories, observatories, and fuel depots. This accessibility is the ultimate strategic advantage of the Moon, offering a gateway to the rest of the outer planets from a position of absolute radiological security. Surprisingly, the trailing hemisphere of the Moon does not share the same absolute tranquility as the rest of the globe, as it endures a constant, gentle bombardment of charged plasma trapped in Jupiter's rotating field. Because the gas giant spins on its axis much faster than the Moon completes its leisurely orbit, the planet's magnetosphere essentially overtakes the satellite from behind, washing over its rear face with a stream of energetic ions. This creates a distinct environmental difference between the two sides of the world, a subtle asymmetry born from the Moon's position within a spinning magnetic sea. The trailing face becomes a target for the plasma that is being whipped around the planet like a giant invisible carousel. These particles are much slower and less energetic than those in the inner belts, yet their persistent arrival creates a unique form of space weathering that is absent on the leading hemisphere. This interaction demonstrates that even in its remote orbit, the Moon is still intimately connected to the kinetic energy of the giant planet it follows. Notice the subtle shift in energy that comes from being pushed from behind, a quiet and unceasing pressure that defines one half of the world's character. This plasma wash is a reminder that the Moon is never truly alone in the dark, but is constantly being touched by the invisible breath of its host. It is a world of two halves, one facing the cosmic wind and the other caught in the planet's magnetic wake. This relentless plasma bombardment acts as a microscopic atomic-scale chisel, slowly sputtering away individual water molecules and subtly altering the chemical makeup of the trailing side over billions of years. As the charged particles strike the ice at high speeds, they break molecular bonds and kick fragments of oxygen and hydrogen into the void, leaving behind a surface that is chemically distinct and physically eroded. This slow-motion weathering is the only wind that blows on this airless world, a silent force that gradually reshapes the dark, ancient ice through the sheer persistence of atomic collisions. Over eons, this process creates a subtle colour gradient across the globe as the trailing hemisphere becomes enriched in heavier materials and depleted of the more volatile gases. The sputtering also contributes to the Moon's thin exosphere, providing a steady supply of molecules that would otherwise remain locked in the frozen crust. It is a form of erosion that occurs one atom at a time, a patient and invisible sculpting of the landscape by the magnetic fields of the giant. As your muscles relax, think of this incredibly slow and patient work, where the universe uses particles of light and energy to reshape a world of solid stone. This sputtering process is a testament to the persistence of nature, showing how even the smallest forces can eventually lead to global changes when given billions of years of time. It is a quiet, atomic dialogue between the Moon and the stars, written in the chemistry of the dark ice. Ultimately, the entire magnetic environment surrounding the Moon serves as a magnificent oasis of calm when compared to the blistering high-energy storms that surround inner siblings like Io and Europa. It is a world where the violent dynamics of the Jovian system are filtered and softened by the vastness of space, resulting in a sanctuary of geologic and magnetic peace. Here, the silence of the world is not just a lack of sound, but a profound state of rest that preserves the history of the solar system in a cradle of cold, invisible light. This magnetic tranquility is the key to the Moon's identity as the ultimate witness, a world that has been allowed to keep its secrets without the constant interference of planetary radiation. It stands as a stable and quiet anchor at the edge of the gas giant's domain, offering a perspective on the cosmos that is free from the noise and fury of the inner system. The Moon's magnetic environment is the final piece of the puzzle, explaining why it has remained so beautifully and hauntingly unchanged for so long. As you drift deeper into relaxation, feel the absolute peace of this magnetic oasis, a place where the storms of the universe are reduced to a gentle, invisible hum. This stillness is the ultimate gift of the Moon, a silence that spans across millions of miles and billions of years. It is a world that has finally found its rest, waiting patiently at the edge of the dark for the next visitor to discover its hidden, liquid heart. Deep within the collective memory of our species, the first patient visitors to seek that hidden, liquid heart were the Pioneer probes, which arrived in the early 1970s to offer the world its first close encounters with this distant moon. These small, golden-hued craft drifted silently through the outer solar system, capturing blurry but tantalizing glimpses of a dark and mysterious globe that had previously been nothing more than a speck in a telescope. The images they returned were grainy and primitive by modern standards, yet they sparked a fire of curiosity that has never been extinguished. Surprisingly, these early snapshots revealed a world far more complex and heavily textured than anyone had predicted during the centuries of distant observation. Even through the digital noise of the era, the immense scale of the cratered plains and the unique dark albedo of the surface began to hint at a history that stretched back to the very dawn of planetary formation. These robotic pioneers served as the first human-made eyes to gaze upon the moon from just a few 100,000 kilometers away, breaking the silence of billions of years. As you rest, let your thoughts drift like those early probes, moving slowly toward the edge of the known system. The pioneers proved that the Jovian system was not just a collection of points of light, but a neighbourhood of vast and varied worlds waiting to be understood in all their frozen glory. This first glance set the stage for a century of exploration, transforming the moon from a mythological name into a physical reality of ice and stone that still captivates us today. Soon after those initial glimpses, the twin Voyager spacecraft revolutionized our collective understanding of the cosmos by revealing the moon's heavily scarred and ringed face in breathtaking detail. As they screamed through the Jovian system at incredible speeds, their high-resolution cameras captured the rhythmic concentric ridges of the massive impact basins and the chaotic, overlapping mosaic of 1 billion ancient craters. These missions provided the first clear maps of the surface, allowing scientists to name the features and begin the long process of deciphering the world's violent geologic history. This robotic structure of the surface, as seen through the sharp lenses of the Voyager twins, shocked the scientific world with its sheer antiquity and total lack of recent activity. Unlike the smooth, ice-covered plains of its neighbours, this moon appeared as an unedited manuscript of the solar system's early history, perfectly preserved in the deep freeze of the outer dark. The Voyagers turned the distant watcher into a focal point of planetary science, establishing it as the most heavily cratered body yet observed by human instruments. Notice how the weight of your body remains steady and supported, much like the rigid ancient crust that the Voyagers documented so thoroughly during their brief but transformative flybys. Every frame returned by the twin craft added a new level of physical depth to our mental image of the moon and its place in the gas giant's empire. They effectively opened the book of the outer solar system, revealing a world that was as beautiful as it was battered, forever changing our perspective on the history of the sun. If we were to look closer at the milestones of our exploration, it was the dedicated Galileo orbiter in the late 90s that provided the critical magnetic data pointing definitively toward a hidden, subsurface ocean. By performing multiple close passes over several years, this sophisticated robotic explorer was able to detect the subtle, induced magnetic signatures that revealed the conductive liquid heart of the moon. This revelation fundamentally changed our perception of the world, moving it from the category of a dead, frozen rock into the elite group of ocean worlds within our star system. The Galileo mission was a triumph of long-term observation, patiently gathering the electromagnetic whispers of the moon and translating them into the language of planetary physics. Its findings suggested that even at this immense distance from the sun, the conditions for liquid water could persist beneath a thick protective shield of ancient ice and dust. This discovery added a layer of mystery and potential to a world that many had previously dismissed as geologically stagnant and uninteresting compared to its volcanic siblings. Deep within the archives of the mission, these magnetic readings remain the gold standard for our understanding of the moon's internal architecture and conductive secrets. The orbiter's tireless work during the final years of the 20th century ensured that the moon would be a primary target for every future mission to the gas giant. It proved that the true nature of a world often lies far beneath its visible surface, hidden in the invisible currents of magnetism and electricity that define the Jovian realm. Even the legendary Cassini spacecraft, while on its 7-year epic journey toward the ringed beauty of Saturn, turned its powerful gaze back toward the Jovian system to capture distant and haunting images of the moon. These photographs, taken from millions of kilometers away, depicted the sphere as a lonely and beautiful wanderer suspended against the infinite star-studded blackness of the void. While Cassini's primary focus was the Saturnian system, its brief observations of this distant watcher provided a unique perspective on the scale and isolation of the outer planets. Surprisingly, these distant shots captured a sense of the moon's immense silent dignity that closer flybys often miss in their focus on specific geological details. The dark, mottled surface glowed faintly with reflected sunlight, a tiny spark of matter and history drifting in the vast, empty suburbs of the gas giant's domain. It was a reminder that the solar system is a connected web of worlds, each one playing a part in the larger celestial mechanics of the sun's far-reaching influence. As you drift into a deeper state of relaxation, imagine that golden glint of the Cassini probe as it sails past, its cameras clicking in the absolute silence of the vacuum. Each frame served as a testament to the moon's enduring presence, a landmark on the long road to the further reaches of the planetary system. Even as a secondary target, the moon commanded the respect and curiosity of the most sophisticated instruments ever built by human hands to explore the deep dark. More recently, the New Horizons probe utilized its powerful and sensitive infrared cameras to map the distribution of surface frost as it utilized Jupiter's gravity to catapult itself toward the outer dark of the Kuiper belt. This high-speed encounter provided a fresh look at the moon's chemical composition, revealing the intricate patterns of frozen water and carbon dioxide that cling to the ancient, dusty regolith. By looking in the infrared spectrum, the probe was able to see through the dark tholins and reveal the true, icy nature of the world's battered face. This thermal structure of the surface, mapped in the heat-sensing light of the infrared, showed how the frost-capped knobs and dark, dusty lowlands interact to create a unique and alien landscape. The data from New Horizons allowed scientists to refine their models of the moon's atmospheric sublimation cycles, showing how the faint touch of the sun continues to move molecules even after 4 billion years. It was a mission of incredible speed and precision, using a fleeting moment to capture a wealth of new information about a world of absolute stasis. Notice the subtle warmth of the air around you and contrast it with the incredibly cold, infrared signatures that New Horizons mapped across the moon's frozen peaks in the deep void. Every byte of data returned by the probe served as a bridge between the inner solar system and the distant dark frontier where the moon keeps its eternal watch. Even as it sped toward its famous encounter with Pluto, the craft took the time to acknowledge the quiet beauty of this ancient and loyal Jovian companion. Excitement is currently building within the international scientific community for the European Space Agency's JUICE mission, which plans to execute multiple close flybys in the coming decade. This advanced spacecraft, whose name stands for the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, will be the first to truly dedicate a significant portion of its mission to the detailed study of the outer Galilean moons. Its suite of sophisticated instruments will look through the ice with radar, map the surface in unprecedented detail, and measure the magnetic environment with far greater precision than ever before. If we were to look closer at the flight plan, we would see that JUICE will perform a series of gravity-assisted passes that will bring it within just a few hundred kilometers of the moon's cratered surface. These close encounters will allow for the most detailed geologic mapping in history, potentially revealing the hidden origins of the strange knobby hills and the mysterious ringed basins. The mission aims to finally confirm the depth and volume of the hidden ocean, turning theories into concrete measurements of the moon's secret liquid heart. As you rest, let the anticipation of this new era of discovery wash over you, much like the slow, sweeping orbits of the JUICE probe will soon wash over the ancient ice. This mission represents a major leap forward in our quest to understand the potential for life and the history of water in the outer solar system. It is a long-awaited return to a world that has been waiting patiently for our gaze to return to its dark and dusty shores for over 2 decades. This planned mission for the Europa Clipper will also turn its advanced and highly sensitive suite of instruments toward this ancient moon to study its complex and whispering exosphere during its many orbits of the gas giant. While its primary objective is the life-searching study of the inner moon Europa, the craft's wide-ranging flight path will bring it into frequent and valuable proximity to the outermost Galilean satellite. This will provide a unique opportunity to study the thin carbon dioxide-rich veil of gas and how it interacts with the solar wind and Jupiter's massive magnetosphere. Surprisingly, the universe has designed the Jovian system such that any mission to one moon inevitably reveals the secrets of the others through their shared environment. The Clipper's mass spectrometer and ultraviolet spectrograph will be able to sample the breadth of the moon as the craft passes through its tenuous exosphere, identifying the exact chemical components that are currently escaping into the void. This data will help us understand how a world without a magnetic shield manages to hold on to a thin atmosphere over billions of years of solar bombardment. Deep within the design of this mission is the recognition that every world in the system is interconnected by the invisible threads of magnetism and gravity. By studying the outer moon's exosphere, scientists can gain a better understanding of the global radiation and plasma environment that affects all of Jupiter's companions. The Clipper will serve as a high-tech scout, sniffing the thin air and capturing the golden glint of the sun off the dark ice as it prepares for its more famous sister mission. Conceptual studies and ambitious proposals like the Hope mission have suggested landing a robotic craft to investigate the dark, dusty surface directly for the first time in human history. These potential landers would be designed to descend into the quiet, cratered landscape, touching down on the ancient ice to perform on-site chemical analysis and seismic monitoring of the interior. A successful landing would be a historic milestone, allowing us to physically touch the oldest surface in the solar system and listen for the faint subterranean murmurs of the hidden ocean. If we were to look closer at the goals of such a mission, we would find a primary focus on the search for organic compounds and the study of the moon's unique, radiation-protected environment. By digging into the top layer of the regolith, a lander could uncover pristine samples of the original planetary nebula that have been shielded from the sun for eons in the deep freeze. This direct investigation would resolve decades of debate about the true composition of the dark minerals that mask the moon's brilliant, icy foundation from our telescopes. Notice how the ground feels solid and unshakable beneath your resting body, just as the ancient crust would feel to a robotic explorer, finally making landfall on those frozen shores. The Hope mission, which stands for High Altitude Orbiting Platform and Explorer, represents the ultimate human desire to reach out and touch the worlds we see in our most powerful instruments. It is the logical next step in our transition from distant watchers to direct participants in the moon's long and silent history at the edge of the dark. Looking toward the distant future, the moon stands out as the premier candidate for the first crewed Jovian surface base, offering a unique combination of geologic stability and radiological safety. Because it sits at the outer edge of the most dangerous radiation belts, human explorers could live and work on its surface with relatively standard shielding, a feat that is currently impossible on the more radioactive inner moons. This safety makes it the front porch of the Jovian system, a place where humanity could establish a permanent foothold in the outer solar system. This logistical structure of the Jovian environment effectively designates the moon as the hub for all future exploration of the gas giant and its many varied companions. A base here would provide a steady supply of water ice for life support and rocket fuel, while the stable crust would allow for the construction of massive telescopes and research facilities. It is a world of incredible potential, a frozen platform from which we could eventually launch missions to the further moons of Saturn, Uranus, and the dark beyond. Deep within the blueprints of future space architects, this moon is envisioned as a thriving outpost of human curiosity and industry in the outer solar system. The absolute stillness of the world would be broken by the rhythmic activity of explorers, scientists, and engineers, all working together to unlock the mysteries of the gas giant's empire. It stands as a beacon of possibility, a silent invitation for our species to step out of our homeworld and onto the ancient dark ice of a new frontier. Every robotic visitor that has crossed the gulf of space to reach these distant shores adds another critical layer of understanding to this quiet and unassuming companion of Jupiter. from the first blurry snapshots of the pioneers to the sophisticated radar mappings of the upcoming missions, our knowledge of the world has grown through a patient and collaborative effort across generations. This cumulative legacy of exploration has transformed a cold and distant point of light into a complex world of hidden oceans, ancient rings, and thin, whispering atmospheres. Surprisingly, the universe reveals its secrets only to those who are patient enough to return again and again with new eyes and more sophisticated instruments. Each probe has served as a temporary inhabitant of the Jovian system, a golden-winged messenger that bridges the gap between our fragile home and the immense freezing dark of the outer planets. The story of the moon is now inseparable from the story of our own technology, a partnership of metal and mind that has revealed the hidden heart of an icy giant. As you drift into a state of absolute calm, appreciate the long line of robotic explorers that have paved the way for our eventual return to these frozen plains. They have broken the silence of eons, turning the moon's gift of stillness into a treasure trove of scientific discovery for all of humanity. The human gaze has finally reached the outer dark, and the moon is no longer just a distant watcher, but a world that we've begun to call our own through the legacy of discovery. This legacy of discovery transitions from robotic wonder into the practical blueprints of a new era. As space architects view this moon as the most logical staging ground for future human exploration of the outer planets. Looking beyond the immediate challenges of our home world, visionary planners see this distant satellite as a natural gateway to the deeper reaches of the solar system. Its position at the edge of the Jovian sphere offers a perfect balance between proximity to a massive resource hub and the serene distance required for long-term safety. Standing upon these ancient shores, future generations will look out toward the swirling bands of Jupiter and the further, colder reaches of the star system with a sense of profound purpose. The moon acts as a stable and unmoving platform, a celestial dock where the massive ships of the future can be assembled and refueled for their long voyages into the dark. It is the ultimate harbour in the Jovian system, a place where the logic of engineering meets the poetry of exploration. Because of its unique placement, every mission launched from this world would require significantly less energy to escape the gas giant's gravity than those starting from deeper within the system. This efficiency makes it the primary candidate for an interplanetary port, a quiet and secure location where humanity can prepare for its final leap into the interstellar void. It is the quiet centre of a new age of discovery, a world that provides the stability needed for our species to truly inhabit the outer dark. One of the most compelling reasons for this selection lies in its incredibly low radiation levels, which provide a rare and safe harbour for astronauts who will eventually live and work on the surface. While the inner moons are constantly scoured by a torrential rain of high-energy particles from Jupiter's magnetosphere, this distant outpost remains a tranquil refuge. This radiological sanctuary allows for longer mission durations and significantly less complex life support infrastructure than any other major body in the Jovian system. In the shadow of the gas giant's power, this moon offers a reprieve from the invisible storms that make long-term survival impossible on more central worlds. Future inhabitants will be able to perform regular activities on the surface without the constant fear of catastrophic solar events or magnetospheric surges. This safety factor is the primary driver for selecting these dark, frozen plains as the foundation for our first permanent home in the outer solar system. The abundance of readily accessible water ice across the dark plains guarantees a steady and vital supply of life support and rocket propellant for the pioneers of the deep dark. By processing the ancient frost that blankets the moon, a self-sustaining colony could produce the oxygen required for breathing and the hydrogen needed to power the next generation of interplanetary vessels. This celestial fuel station would effectively shorten the distance to the further reaches of the outer solar system, transforming the moon into the primary logistics hub for our species. As you continue to let your muscles soften and your body sink into a state of total rest, Imagine the immense value of this frozen treasure waiting silently beneath the dust. Every crater and every plain is filled with millions of tons of high-purity water just waiting to be tapped by the engineers of tomorrow. This resource is the lifeblood of exploration, a hidden ocean of potential that removes the need for costly and dangerous supply lines from the inner planets. Mining these icy deposits is a straightforward task on a world with such a stable and predictable environment, allowing for the rapid expansion of human presence. The ice is not just a geological feature, it is the fundamental currency of a spacefaring civilization, the key that unlocks the door to the rest of the Jovian system and beyond. It is a world that provides its own sustenance, a self-contained oasis that invites us to stay and build a lasting legacy among the stars. Furthermore, the moon's profound geologic stability means that a permanent surface base would never face the terrifying threats of catastrophic earthquakes, erupting cryovolcanoes, or shifting ice plates. Unlike its restless siblings that are constantly kneaded and broken by tidal forces, this world offers an unyielding foundation that has remained essentially unchanged for eons. Architects can design structures with the confidence that the ground beneath them will stay exactly where it is for centuries to come. This absolute lack of tectonic activity allows for the construction of massive, long-lived facilities that would be physically impossible on the churning, volatile surfaces of Io or Europa. From towering communications arrays to sprawling underground habitats, the engineering possibilities are limited only by our imagination rather than the instability of the crust. This stability is a rare gift in a system defined by its violent and energetic movements, providing a peaceful anchor in a realm of constant change. If we were to examine the history of this world, we would find a chronicle of absolute stillness, a billions of years long record of a surface that has mastered the art of being still. This reliability is the ultimate security for a budding colony, ensuring that the work of today will remain intact for the generations of tomorrow. It is a silent, unshakable sanctuary, a world that offers the most stable ground in the entire Jovian Empire. Picture surface habitats built with panoramic views of the stars, designed entirely without the need for the massive buried radiation shields that would be mandatory for survival on more hazardous moons. On the surface of Europa, humans would be forced to live in lightless tunnels deep beneath meters of protective ice, or led to avoid the blistering particle storms of the magnetosphere. Here, the mild environment allows for light-filled architectures where explorers can remain visually connected to the silent blackness of space while staying perfectly secure. These habitats could utilize transparent materials to invite the faint, cold light of the distant sun into living spaces, creating a sense of openness and connection to the cosmos. This psychological benefit is immeasurable for crews stationed millions of kilometers from home, providing a visual link to the universe they have come to explore. Instead of hiding in bunkers, the pioneers of this moon will live as inhabitants of the heights, watching the stars from the safety of their ancient, stable ground. This structural freedom allows for a more organic and human-centric design of our future outposts, turning a mission of survival into a true act of habitation. The ability to build on the surface rather than digging into the dark changes the entire character of the exploration effort, making it feel more like a new frontier than a prison. It is a vision of a future where we do not just visit the dark, but we bring our own light and our own views to the edge of the void. From this secure and tranquil vantage point, future explorers could launch smaller, targeted missions deeper into Jupiter's hazardous inner system to study the volatile environments of the other moons. By establishing a central command post on this stable ground, humanity could deploy robotic scouts and short-term crewed vessels into the high radiation zones without risking the long-term health of the base inhabitants. It serves as a fortress at the gate, a safe harbour from which we can carefully probe the mysteries of the gas giant's more turbulent companions. Notice the stillness of your own breath, as even and predictable as the orbits that connect this moon to its massive planetary host. This outpost would act as the primary mission control for the entire Jovian system, providing a safe and local base of operations for a wide variety of scientific endeavours. The proximity to the inner moons allows for real-time control of robotic explorers, significantly increasing the efficiency and safety of our data gathering. This strategic advantage transforms the moon into the most important piece of real estate in the outer solar system, a point of departure and a point of return for every journey into the Jovian dark. It is a world that supports its neighbours by providing the security and stability they lack, acting as a silent partner in the exploration of the most violent and energetic places in our neighbourhood. The moon is the steady hand that guides our reach into the heart of the giant's domain. Advanced mining operations could easily and efficiently extract complex organic molecules and essential silicates directly from the dusty surface layer that has accumulated over the eons. This dark regolith is a treasure trove of primitive building blocks, delivered by ancient comets and forged by billions of years of cosmic chemistry. These materials provide the raw ingredients needed for additive manufacturing and local chemical production, ensuring that a base here would not need to rely solely on expensive shipments from the distant Earth. By utilising the resources found in the brownish-black tholins and silicate dust, a colony could produce everything from structural components to advanced fertilisers for hydroponic gardens. This industrial independence is the key to true sustainability in deep space, allowing our presence to grow and adapt using the very ground beneath our feet. The surface is not just a barrier to be crossed, but a rich and ancient resource to be harnessed by the ingenuity of our species. Surprisingly, the universe has provided us with a perfectly mixed supply of raw materials, preserved in a state of absolute stasis since the beginning of the solar system. Mining on this world is a clean and predictable process, free from the complications of atmosphere or complex geology found on other planets. It is a world of plenty, a dark and dusty treasure chest that has been waiting patiently for the human gaze to recognize its value. Placing massive radio telescopes on the moon's far side would shield them entirely from Jupiter's gargantuan radio emissions, creating the most pristine observatory in the entire planetary neighbourhood. By using the bulk of the moon as a natural barrier, astronomers can look out into the furthest reaches of the cosmos without the deafening interference of the gas giant's magnetospheric storms. This silent, radio-quiet zone offers an unparalleled window into the birth of stars in the most distant galaxies, far removed from the electronic noise of our home planet. In the absolute quiet of the moon's shadow, these instruments could detect the faintest whispers from the early universe, signals that are currently drowned out by the chaos of the Jovian environment. This makes the far side of the moon the most valuable astronomical site in the outer solar system, a place where we can finally listen to the universe in its purest form. It is a sanctuary for the mind, a place of total focus and absolute scientific clarity. As you rest, imagine the immense dish-like structures resting silently in the craters of the far side, their ears tuned to the beginning of time. This location provides a degree of shielding that is impossible to achieve anywhere else, turning the moon into a giant planetary ear that hears the secrets of the dark. It is the ultimate expression of the moon's gift of silence, transformed into a tool for the deepest understanding of our place in the cosmos. Studying the ancient and undisturbed crust offers a perfect, uncontaminated window into the violent earliest days of our solar system's formation. Because the surface has never been recycled by tectonic activity or washed clean by liquid water, the impact scars and mineral deposits represent a primary record of the primordial nebula. Every core sample taken from the deep frozen ground is a time capsule, allowing scientists to reconstruct the events that shaped our corner of the universe with incredible precision. As you feel the absolute stillness of your own body, consider the immense spans of time recorded in the layers of ice and stone that wait silently below the surface. This world has kept its secrets for over 4 billion years, protecting the physical evidence of our origins from the ravages of heat and light. It is a planetary library where the books are made of frost and the ink is composed of ancient stardust. By decoding the information trapped in the cratered plains, we can finally answer the most fundamental questions about how the planets were built and where the ingredients for life originated. This moon is the ultimate witness, a world that has been present for every major event in the history of the Sun and has remembered them all in the language of geology. It is a world of profound historical value, a frozen archive that offers a unique perspective on the journey of our entire star system. Ultimately, this distant sphere remains the quietest and most peaceful retreat in the otherwise chaotic and high-energy realm of the magnificent gas giant. While the rest of the Jovian system is a theatre of volcanic eruptions, magnetic storms and tidal destruction, this world stands as a monument to stability and rest. It is a place of profound solitude, where the only movement is the slow, rhythmic shifting of shadows across a landscape that has forgotten the meaning of change. Standing on the dark ice and looking up at the distant, silent blackness of space, one feels a sense of belonging that only a world of such ancient stability can provide. It is the final harbour, the end of the long road through the Jovian system, and the beginning of a new relationship with the stars. This peaceful outpost is the moon's final gift to humanity, a place to call our own in the infinite and beautiful void. Callisto is not merely a dead rock, but a perfectly preserved cosmic museum that silently guards an ancient hidden sea, reminding us that sometimes the universe's greatest mysteries are concealed beneath its quietest surfaces. Deep within this ancient frozen world lies the final realization that Callisto is not merely a dead rock, but a perfectly preserved cosmic museum that silently guards an ancient hidden sea. This grand synthesis teaches us that the universe's most profound mysteries are often concealed beneath its quietest and most unassuming surfaces. The journey through these shadows proves that stillness is not the absence of life, but the deepest form of preservation. This realization brings a final sense of closure to the long voyage across the Jovian system, allowing the mind to settle alongside the ancient ice. As we leave the distant watcher behind, the vastness of the cosmos begins to recede, replaced by the immediate and gentle reality of your own presence. The immense history of the stars is now just a soft, fading echo in the back of your mind. Surprisingly, the body begins its final surrender at the very edges, where your toes feel the soft, cool weight of the sheets. Let that heavy sensation flow through your arches and into your heels, anchoring you to the mattress. Every muscle in your feet now releases its last bit of tension, sinking into the support of the bed. This quiet room holds you as the relaxation moves upward, softening the muscles of your calves and shins. If we were to look closer, we would see the tiny fibres of your legs letting go, becoming as still as the ancient ice we once discussed. Your knees feel loose and warm, resting without effort. Notice how the heavy, grounding comfort now travels into your thighs, smoothing away the day's movement. Your hips settle deeply into the bedding, finding a perfect, unshakable alignment with the surface below. The lower half of your body is now a landscape of total, unmoving calm. A gentle, rhythmic rise and fall carries the peace into your center, where your stomach and chest become light and free. Each breath is a slow tide, moving with the same patient logic as the distant worlds. Your heart beats with a steady, quiet pulse, echoed by the stillness of the room. Shoulders that have carried the weight of the day now melt downward, feeling broad and weightless against the pillow. This relaxation flows like a warm liquid down your arms, through your elbows, and into the very tips of your fingers. Your hands rest open and still, having finished their work. The delicate muscles of the neck now find their rest, letting the heavy weight of the head be fully cradled by the soft fabric. Your jaw unclenches, creating a small, comfortable gap behind your teeth. Every tiny line around the eyes and across the forehead simply vanishes into the shadows of the room. The blanket feels like a soft, protective layer that keeps the warmth exactly where it needs to be. In this stillness, the only sound is the quiet, muffled hush of the air moving through the house. The mattress supports every curve of the back, making it feel as though you are drifting on a sea of soft cotton. A subtle coolness in the air makes the warmth of the quilt even more inviting and substantial. This fabric is a barrier against the noise of the day, a place where the only requirement is to let go. You're nestled into a cocoon of silence, where time has no meaning, and the only reality is the rhythm of your own heart. The weight of the day has been set aside, replaced by the heavy, pleasant pull of an incoming sleep. Words begin to lose their shape, turning into soft, indistinct echoes of comfort. You're safe, you're warm, and you're completely still. Everything around you is tuned to the frequency of rest, from the steady ticking of a clock to the way the shadows fall across the floor. The life outside the door has faded into a distant memory, replaced by the immediate soft reality of the bed. You're heavy, you're calm, and you're drifting closer to the edge of dreams. Let the sensation of the pillow beneath your cheek be the last thing you notice before the dreams take hold. The room is quiet, the air is still, and the night is long. Peace is the only thing that remains in this soft, dark place. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.